Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the College Station City Council. I hereby announce that the date is August 13th, 2026, and the time is 6 p.m. No vote or action was taken in the executive session. Therefore, we will return to the regular agenda. Okay, the regular agenda, of course, is hopefully everybody's picked up a copy outside. I do have a few speakers tonight, but we'll start with our agenda items, if I can turn to the right page. Item 4, Pledge of Allegiance, invocation, and we do have one absence request to consider. If I can find it up here and remind me. So first we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and the invocation tonight will be presented by Chaplain Matthew Winkler. He remains standing after the pledge, and he will lead us in the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Please remain standing.
Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, look with mercy, we pray, upon this community of College Station, and bless this meeting of our City Council. Grant that these elected servants wisdom beyond their own, clarity in deliberation, patience in disagreement, and unity in all that serves the common good. Renew the bonds of charity that uphold our civic life. Continue to raise up among us honest and able leaders, faithful in their stewardship of the public trust. Give grace to our city management team and all who labor in daily governance of this city. Grant them diligence in their duties, integrity in their decisions, and perseverance in every good work. Deliver us all from poverty, prejudice, and oppression, that peace may prevail with righteousness and justice with mercy. We commend to your gracious care and keeping all who serve this city as first responders, in fire and law enforcement, in emergency medicine, and in every unseen act of protection and service. Defend them day by day with your heavenly grace. Strengthen them in their trials and temptations. Give them courage to face the perils which beset them, and grant them a sure trust in your abiding presence, wherever they may be called. Make us people mindful of our neighbors, quick to seek the welfare of the city, and steadfast in hope. I pray all these things in the name of God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chaplain Winkler, chaplain of the College Station Fire Department. We appreciate very much your service and being with us this evening. We do have a request for absence from one of our council members who unfortunately had to be out of town on family emergency business. So Mr. Yancy has submitted his absence form. The chair will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the absence request. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So we've honored his request and wish him a speedy return. Okay, we don't have a proclamation tonight, so I don't have to come down in front. We can go directly to your visitors. We had, I think, 6 different people signed up, but 2 of those hopefully have been, I think, directed to an agenda item that matches fairly closely what they were planning to talk about. But we have 4, and I will bring them forward in the order that is given to me. The very first one is Melanie Scarpace from Scotty's house. Welcome, Melanie. Be followed by John Hamilton after she's done.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Melanie Scarpacci, and I'm the Director of External Relations for Scotty's House, the Child Advocacy Center that serves all 7 counties within the Brazos Valley. And we do have handouts for you guys. We've got the folders. I'm joined tonight by Lily Arnold. She is our community educator. Scotty's House provides forensic interviews, forensic medical evaluations, family support, and counseling to children who may have experienced abuse or another serious crime, all at no cost to the families. In 2025, we served 531 children from right here in Brazos County, conducting 339 forensic interviews and 86 forensic medical evaluations, supporting 299 families, and providing 1,648 counseling sessions. Behind those numbers are hundreds of local children and families who needed specialized support after abuse or another serious crime. But we do not want to wait until a child needs a forensic interview, medical evaluation, or counseling to begin helping them. Prevention education allows us to reach children and the adults around them much earlier. That is where Lily's work begins.
Thank you, Melanie. Good evening, council members. Thank you for having us. Scotty's House offers free, age-appropriate safety education for children from preschool through 12th grade. We teach children to recognize unsafe situations, understand boundaries, identify safe adults, stay safer online, and speak up when something feels wrong. We also provide free programs for parents, educators, and community organizations. Adults learn to recognize warning signs, respond calmly when a child shares a concern, and report suspected abuse. We can bring these programs to schools, churches, youth groups, civic organizations, businesses, anywhere people care about keeping children safe, and there is never a cost. Our request tonight is simple. Help us spread the word. Connect us with the schools, organizations, neighborhoods, and workplaces that you serve so that we can bring this education to more people in College Station. Child abuse is not only a children's issue, it is a community safety issue. Prevention begins when children have the language to speak up and adults have the tools to listen and respond. Thank you for helping us ensure every child has a safe place to turn.
Thank you both for being here. We appreciate the information you provided. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the list is John Hamilton. He'll be followed by Maury Jacob. Mr. Hamilton, welcome. Identify yourself and where you're from.
Good evening. My name is John Hamilton. I'm a College Station resident, and I'm here to talk about what happened 3 weeks ago at the last workshop item. The flock representative that was here lied directly to your faces. He said, "Flock has never been hacked." This was a bold-faced lie. Industry standards consider a breach, a compromise, or a hack to be any incident where an unauthorized party has access, when data is disclosed without authorization, or when data control is lost. This includes things like hardware vulnerabilities, network compromises, unauthorized access to data with abused access controls, and undisclosed third-party integrations. Sound familiar? I've extensively covered the hardware vulnerabilities in these cameras, and when asked about the issue, the flock representative said, quote, "The hardware we deem as not impeding any customer information because it was the hardware," end quote. The hardware does give you access to the customer data because it is stored in the camera before it gets uploaded. And none of you pressed him to answer why such critical security vulnerabilities have been allowed to remain to this very day. I showed you pictures taken from cameras that were live streaming across the internet with no username or password needed. One of those pictures was from a playground where children were swinging. None of you asked the representative why these cameras were live streaming for anyone to find. You didn't ask what steps they made to make sure this won't happen again. Nothing. The flock representative said they keep a right to use our data to train their AI algorithms. Did you know they hire temp workers in countries like Philippines to look at the photos taken from our cameras to train their AI models? Wired and 404 Media reported on this in December of 2025. Flock has clearly had many security vulnerabilities, security breaches, has been compromised, has unauthorized access, and yes, has been hacked. And the representative's only response to my speech was to say I got my information from a YouTube video. I come here week after week and have all my claims have always been backed up by trusted sources. I watched him lie about me and lie about Flock security issues to you all, and you thanked him for it. In April of this year, the City Council of Oshkosh, Wisconsin, had a meeting with a Flock representative, very similar to what we had. When the council found out the representative lied to their face, They held an emergency meeting and canceled their flock contract the very next day. The very next day. What will you all do? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next presentation is Maury Jacobs, will be followed by Ivan Shrevik. Good evening, sir.
Hello, my name is Maury Jacob. I am a longtime Bryan resident. My professional career was spent designing and promoting local bicycle and pedestrian projects. When College Station began developing for bicyclists in the early 90s, times were simpler. Cars and trucks on streets and intersections, a growing Texas A&M campus. Bicyclists, represented by the Brazos Valley Cyclists, asked the council for wide outside lanes on major corridors to commute to the university. Well, much has changed. Today, motorist distractions include smartphones and touchscreens. Pickups and SUVs have immense hoods and blind spots. Congestion has exploded with growth. Road rage has become a thing. With new guidance, striped bike lanes became the go-to design and many roads were improved. As guidance evolved, College Station has upgraded some to safer, protected and separated bike lanes and installed shared use paths as an off-road solution. We've made great progress over the years. But time marches on and technology with it. New micromobility travel modes from e-scooters to e-motors share streets, bike lanes, trails, and sidewalks. Micromobility devices come with high potential to reduce vehicular congestion by greatly expanding rider range. Yet, all these modes make for a complex transportation system. Fast and slow speeds don't mix well on streets, with even bigger and heavier motor vehicles. At the same time, speedier devices don't mix well with pedestrians on sidewalks and shared use paths. How can we make biking and walking safe enough for citizens to widely adopt? That's the key issue here. So, suggested are 5 potential actions. Post speed limits with radar feedback at key intersections. Wow. And shared use paths and sidewalks to allow type 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes to safely use those facilities at appropriate speeds. Pass and post prohibition of e-motors on bicycle-specific facilities. Expand the system of well-connected, separated, and protected bike lanes. And finally, enact safe passing rules for motor vehicles overtaking vulnerable road users riding on the road and in bike lanes. I want to focus on that. What we ask for is a safe passing city ordinance plus a city council resolution asking for a statewide safe passing law. Both should feature minimum 3-foot passing distance for cars and minimum 6-foot passing distance for trucks. Thank you for your time. Oh, I went red. I thought I was done.
Yeah, you know you're done. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. We do have a copy of your statement up here. Okay, and the fourth speaker is Ivan Shrevchek.
You're definitely getting better at it.
I'll get enough times. I will work on it.
Yeah. So my name's Ivan Svrchek. I'm a resident of Bryan. I work down in Welborn. I'm only speaking for myself tonight. Oh. Yeah. Anyway, I'm only speaking for myself tonight. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you for having an agenda item about the flock cameras last time around. That's good to have that out. I have a number of notes from that meeting, but only time to talk about one thing today, and that is video. It was stated multiple times that CSPD flock cameras cannot do video. Some HOA or business cameras may be able to, but those are completely separate and do not feed into CSPD data. While I mentioned it at the last meeting, I did not have a slide ready to show you what our actual contract says about this. Here you can see one of the order forms from the September 25th, 2025 agenda packet showing a line item with a quantity of 10 for flock freeform included integrated video streams. And indeed, when we look at the resulting invoice from December 4th of 2025, there's a quantity of 10 flock freeform included integrated video streams. I can't tell you what hardware those video streams come from, but we can all see that we have them. Okay, so our contract provides for 10 video streams from somewhere. What about the 75 fixed cameras along the side of the road that we've been told are only capable of single pictures? I would like to show you a couple of posts by Flock and its representatives about their ALPR cameras. First, here's an excerpt from a blog post on June 4th last year, proudly proclaiming to law enforcement that every existing Flock LPR camera can soon become video-enabled, with a no-cost software update pushed over the cloud. Then, in another blog post snippet, we have this: all existing Flock LPRs will soon stream live video. This must not have been popular because Flock Safety has deleted or edited out these sections about video upgrades earlier this week from their website. If you'd like to see these old posts yourself, I would normally tell you to just go use the Wayback Machine and look at last week's version. But strangely, Flock Safety has opted out of the Internet Archive for their whole website. LinkedIn isn't monitored and controlled as well by Flock, though, so even though the blog posts they reference don't exist anymore, we have things like this regional sales director mentioning the video upgrade, or their senior VP with a little snippet about it. To be clear, video doesn't matter. You or your vehicle are logged and uploaded to the database. It doesn't matter whether it's a 5-second clip or a still picture. What matters here is the truth, and we were not given it. I would ask you to please remember that when we're getting information from Flock Safety and others in this industry. They want to hide in silence, and they don't want to give us the truth.
Thank you very much, sir. That takes care of the 4 people who have signed up for Here Visitors. We will move now on to agenda item number 6, which is the consent agenda. And the consent agenda consists, I think, of 16 items, if I'm not mistaken. Correct. Is there any council member that wishes to have staff answer questions on any of them? You need any information? Mr. White, which numbers?
Yes, Mayor, if I could speak on 6.4, 6.12, and 6.16.
4, 12, and 16. Hang on just a second. Let me get those marked. 6, 4, 6, 12, you said?
4, 12, and 16.
And 6, 16. Okay. Any others that wish to have a staff member comment? Okay. Well, Ms. Cotter, you're here.
Yes.
Number 6.4, let me read it. Presentation, discussion, possible action regarding a semi-annual report on system-wide impact fees for water, wastewater, and roadway. Ms. Cotter.
Thank you so much for being here. Let me ask you a couple of questions, if I may. This is a semi-annual report, but we're going to get the 5-year report early next year. Is that correct?
Yes, we are in the process of updating the impact fees right now.
Okay, and when we get the 5-year report, is that an action item for council, or is that something that we just review as we do the semi-annual reports, or what?
No, it is for review and action. We'll look at the land use assumptions, the growth projections again, the capital improvement plan that's needed to serve that growth. You'll look at and approve both of those items, and then from that, a maximum assessable impact fee will be calculated, and y'all will look at that and vote to adopt that, and then again, set collection rate from those as well.
Great segue into my couple real quick questions for you, if I may. So we started receiving impact fees in 2016, around there. Is that correct?
System-wide impact fees, but prior to that, starting in '92, we had small area impact fees for water and wastewater.
Okay. So my research shows that we've collected probably about 34 million, give or take a little bit, since 2016. And the city has funded about 219 million. Does that seem about accurate?
Sure.
Okay. Of that 34 million, I read that 22 million has been allocated and the rest have not. Can you explain the difference between impact fees that have been used and allocated and some that are not?
Yes, we've collected them from the permits that have been issued, the impact fees that have been paid, those have been collected or considered revenue. The impact fees that have been allocated have actually been applied to projects.
So we have about 11 million that have not been applied to any of projects, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that seems like a high number to me. Why are we not applying that to any of our infrastructure projects that we have?
I think the majority of it is for the roadway impact fee projects, and that is because we're applying them as cash. So for those projects, we wait until we have a project to apply them to.
Councilmember, just to tell you kind of how, I would say we collect them. They're in areas, depending on which one you're talking about. When we have a project that's eligible for them, we use it to fund it, and that offsets the taxes that you would have to pay to generate the debt if you did not have those impact fees. So we have to, by law, spend them in the areas and on the uses that you have, and so we do those as we go.
So it's more of a timing thing, right? We're lagging.
Yep. And so you get enough, you may have a project in one area that's eligible for impact fees, and you may use that, but then if a big development comes in and pays impact fees after that project, then it's until you have another project you can spend them on.
Very, very helpful. One last question for you, if I may. Your report basically says that we're using 60% of what we could charge. Is that percentage a policy set by council, or why are we only charging the developer 60% rather than 100%?
Yes. So as Carol mentioned, not to go all through it again, but what you do is you go out and based on what you're legally allowed to do, you come up with what your capital plan will be and then a dollar amount. And then you assign what portion of that capital plan can be assigned to development. And then that becomes your max collection rate. So the state says, based on the impact and the calculations, you can collect, let's say $100. And the council says, yep, based on all these facts and what we see in the projects, we believe that that's a fair assessment. Then you come back and decide that that is the max amount, let's say $100, in this case, your example, but we, for whatever reason, only want to collect 60% of that. And again, it's 0 to 60. So you have projects that you're going to have to fund, and you either use city cash, it's in the budget, tax rate and debt, or impact fees. And where you set and put all of those is totally at the discretion of the council.
Okay, that's ultimately what I was trying to get at. When does that take place? When does that, is that at the 5-year
You certainly review it with a 5-year, but several times, even the last few years, that question has been put to council. So technically, the council can change that collection rate at any time just by going through a process, which does involve the Impact Fee Advisory Committee in an advisory role, and then it comes to council. So there have been several times, certainly in my tenure, but even in the last couple of years where that question has been asked, and it's really up to council. Once you set that max collection rate, anything between 0 and the max collection rate is totally up to you all.
Gotcha. So we might revisit that early 2027.
Based on my experience in local government, we will revisit it over and over and over.
But we did, the previous council revisited it 2 or 3 years ago, and we set a stair-step January 1
That's
correct.
collection, and that, I think, went through last January 1, or is it, does next January 1 change again?
I think it
No,
is.
the
That's the
last
fourth one?
increase, the last of the 3 increases occurred this past
Yeah.
January.
That's what I
This
thought.
past year. So at this moment, that's the policy
Right.
is where it's at.
And
There is no-
unless a council directs something else, then that's where it stays.
Right,
When
right.
you come back for a 5-year review, which is again a statutory requirement, and we'll talk more about it, but what roads or parts of the system you put in are also up for discussion. So we don't even have everything we could have in our capital plan in there. We try to work with the development community and others to say what makes sense. But then once you've agreed on all that, kind of what the parameters are, then the where the rubber meets the road is what is your collection rate.
And I remember the 3 years. I thought we had finished that 3-year.
Correct.
That 3-year
Yes.
plan.
It is at the max.
And-
It is what the collection rate that council said would be the maximum in that 3-year plan at
That's
this point.
perfect. Thank you so much. I
Welcome.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cotter. Next item that Mr. White asked for was 6.12. Emily Fisher, or whoever is representing Public Works. Presentation, discussion, possible action on the ordinance amending was traffic and vehicles, Chapter 38, Article 6, traffic schedules, so on and so forth. Let me see, this is school zones. Code of Ordinances, City College Station, Texas, by amending the operational time of multiple locations and by combining the Cypress Grove Intermediate School and Creekview Elementary School zones in a single school zone. Mr. Smith, this is yours.
Thank you so much. Question for you real quick. The school zone, I think you were changing the school zone times to coincide with the operations of the school. Is that correct? It was 7 to 9, and I don't know, I couldn't remember what the actual operational hours are.
I'll go back to what we did last year. Some of y'all may remember we were up here last year. There was kind of a last minute change that we didn't realize the school was changing their operational times. And so what we did was we had done a specific school zone for each and every school, which ended up causing some issues. Because in that quick change, we missed some school zones that were right next to each other that made more sense to combine them so there weren't conflicting school zones right next door to each other. And also, we ended up with a situation where we had crossing guards showing up before the school zone time started, because that's what their schedule was based upon. And that was based upon that's when the kids were starting to show up. So what we did was, this proposal is to go and change some of those where we realized there were some issues. We wanted to go ahead and make those areas safer. And it occurred to us that we could do a 7 to 9 and I believe it's 3 to 5 school zone time at all of those school zones. And the eventual goal is to apply that citywide. We have talked to the school, we've talked to CSPD, and there's lots of support for it. We all agree that it's a great idea to have a consistent school zone, so that way there's a consistent expectancy from the drivers, so that way they know that there's not different school zones at every single school. And so that way, if there's early release, if there's a event before school where kids are wanting to show up early, they will be covered by that additional time.
Perfect. One final question. Why aren't we doing it for all the schools now? I mean, I think we're doing it for just like 8 school zones. Why? I mean, is there a reason why we're just not going to jump in and do them all?
Operationally, it's a lot of signs.
Gotcha.
And we decided this based on some feedback that we got, and it's just a lot of work, a lot of signs to go and do it all at once. And so we decided to do it in 2 phases. We're looking to come back at the end of the semester to do the rest of the signs.
Okay. And didn't I read that about half of them are digital? So all we have to do is like reprogram it? Is that kind of?
That's correct. We're able to change them all remotely because they all have SIM cards in them. So a lot of them are just an easy digital change because a lot of the signs don't list the times, but the ones that have the placards, we do have to physically go change all of those placards to make sure they match up with the times.
So by the end of the school year, we'll have all of them on the same?
That's correct.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. White also asked for 6.16. It's Ms. Hayden. This is a presentation, discussion, possible action regarding a resolution authorizing a submission of a local parks grant application to Texas Parks and Wildlife Department for up to $750,000 in grants and designating the city manager as the authorized official for the submission of the application.
Good evening.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Is pickleball still a popular sport? How many public courts do we have in tennis versus pickleball?
So outdoor courts,
Yeah.
we have 4 dedicated pickleball courts, and then we have 14 dedicated tennis courts currently. That's
And-
including Bachman.
And you want to convert Bachman to pickleball?
That would be, if we had the funding for this project, that would be the project, yes, sir.
And how many of those tennis courts would you convert to pickleball?
So we don't have an official design, but currently what we have out there are striped pickleball courts at Bachman, and there's 6 of them. They do not have nets, so you have to bring your own net, so they're very underutilized. But the proposed plan would probably be to convert those to permanent pickleball, which would be 6 courts. So it would take 2 tennis courts and turn them into 6 pickleball courts.
Perfect. Really, the question that I have on this one is the matching grant money that the city will be paying. So you're asking for $750,000. You're going to have matching city grant or city money for that. And I read where you're putting it in the 2027 budget.
So
I kind of had a real quick conversation. Are we putting the cart before the horse on this one because we haven't approved the budget yet?
it would be with the proposed capital budget that council had appointed the $5 million for park improvements. And because the budget's not approved yet, correct, if we didn't have the funding, we couldn't proceed with the grant. But we won't know if we get the grant until early spring.
So we're approving tonight to move forward to apply for the
Correct.
grant, even though we haven't secured the matching grant from the city yet?
Yeah, so it's just an application. So if you're basically telling them we're going to apply for this, if we were selected and said, actually, we don't have the money, then we just would not receive the grant.
Okay.
Correct. And
That's what I
the
was
idea
worried
is,
about, the matching and putting it in the 27 budget that haven't been adopted yet.
certainly.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Hayden. Appreciate that. That takes us to the end of the questions. Seeing no others, is there any of the items that council members wish to pull for a separate vote? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion to approve items 6.1 through 6.16.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Smith seconds it. Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously, so thank you very much. Workshop item, we have one this evening. Mr. Harper coming forward, so I'll just read the citation and we'll go to his presentation. Presentation, discussion, possible direction regarding impervious cover limitation in the Bee Creek drainage basin. Now, this item is on workshop agenda as a request from a council member, or from council, I should say. So that's why it's being brought forward at this time. Mr. Harper, please proceed.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Lucas Harper, Planning and Development Services.
Pull that microphone over right a little more in front of you. There you go. Well,
Tonight's workshop item was brought forth as a result of a council-requested future agenda item regarding presentation by College Station Association of Neighborhoods about impervious cover in the Bee Creek drainage basin. City staff has met with a council representative and the College Station Association of Neighborhoods externally to discuss the basin-wide detention aspects of their presentation. And this item will primarily focus on the remaining ordinance topics that were covered in the presentation. This item is to assist council in any future changes that may be pursued, but staff is not recommending any changes to the ordinance with this workshop. Two of the requests that were made in the presentation were to allow impervious cover exceptions in the middle housing zoning district and restrict them in general suburban, and to require any impervious exceptions in general suburban to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustments. Some key considerations when council thinks about this is Unified Development Ordinance already allows exceptions to impervious limitations through the submission of an engineered drainage analysis for both general suburban and middle housing. The importance of this is that it allows the engineer the opportunity to determine both type 1 and type 2 detention. And type 1 detention, which is flood controlled detention, is generally, when you think about it, it would be downstream impacts of the development. And then type 2 conveyance management detention would generally focus on the conveyance pathway from the site that's being developed over to the primary drainage system. It's especially important whenever we look at development in middle housing that comes in piecemeal, since those do affect the surrounding lots and property. The second requested consideration would require the zoning board of adjustment approval for general suburban exceptions. And those reviews would be based on the existing ZBA criteria. And this slide shows a summation of the impervious cover table that can be found in section 5.2 of the ordinance. It lists the maximum impervious cover, and one of the important parts of this table is that all of these maximums are notated with an exception to be granted if the applicant does submit an engineered draining analysis along with all of these projects. The second part of this is the zoning board of adjustments variance criteria. And another important thing that I'll point out here is it does include number 6, which is flood hazard protection. So the same drainage criteria, the same drainage analysis that would be submitted for staff review would be submitted with the ZBA criteria review. Slide 3 is an overall map of the Bee Creek drainage basin, and it shows our current areas that we have zoned to middle housing. And the important thing about this slide is how spatially these are placed in the basin, and their adjacency to our primary drainage system, which is generally FEMA-named tributaries for the area. In almost all of these cases, the proximity isn't close enough to allow one flood control type. Each of these projects that come in piecemeal would have to provide conveyance detention anyway, so that they are not flooding their neighboring lots and houses. And then I'll end with this, and these are the options to change this to require zoning board of adjustments approval. We would have to revise section 5.2 of the UDO. So some things to consider are, would we require ZBA variance for just general suburban, or would that be for all districts? And then would we limit this to just certain detention basins, or would these be citywide adjustments? Again, staff is not recommending any changes to the ordinance at this time. And with that, concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. I do have one person signed up to speak, but I would first turn to the council members to raise the questions they have or provide guidance that they have, and then we'll have the one individual that signed up to speak, and then we'll come back to council. So I think Mr. Shafer probably raised this question initially on behalf of council, so I'll turn to him and ask for his thoughts and comments, and then any others that wish to weigh in can do so.
Thanks, Mayor. So the reason that I feel like this has come up is because, as we all know, there has been a change in policy related to what is likely to happen in terms of density in the South Side area and possibly Eastgate and other areas that are close to campus, and part of this has been something the council has encouraged through middle housing. But it feels like it might really accelerate now that we no longer have the opportunity to use relatedness as an issue in terms of occupancy. So I think, and I think Mr. Elliott will speak to it, but my question, I guess, is, I know things can be engineered quite well. There are a bunch of engineers in the room who are civil engineers and and are familiar with hydrology and everything else, but it does worry me a little bit when these kind of changes take place, and I don't always feel confident. And I know there are examples around Texas and around the country where it doesn't always work as nicely as it's engineered. And so I think there's a concern that in this area, as things densify, that a more conservative approach, even though you've recommended no change in the ordinance, and I have to admit, I haven't studied it carefully enough to say exactly how I would recommend a change, or maybe even if I would. But I think there's a need for careful consideration here, because it's we're going to see a change in density. And when you look at the middle housing at 75% coverage compared to general suburban at 55, or which would be the two in that area, we could see a change in impervious coverage from 55 to 75 pretty quickly as things evolve in that area. So I guess what I would ask at this point is, why is it that staff feels there is no danger in increased density in some of these neighborhoods, and therefore increased impervious cover? Is it just about engineering? Everything can be engineered completely?
Yeah, I think that the short answer is that yes. I mean, basically the standard for engineering, because it applies to, any level of impervious cover, that would be our answer, is that the way that you calculate it, whether you've got this percentage of impervious cover or that, then the detention would have to offset it. So that's the basic answer, is that from an ordinance perspective, we believe we can apply what's in the ordinance to a varying degree of products. Now, from a policy perspective and kind of that general concern, or like, what do you see? I think that's where council comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the questions I have, again, without looking at it carefully, is where does detention occur in areas that are denser? I mean, I understand when I look at detention facilities around the city that are grass and sort of obvious areas that kind of remain that way most of the time, except for when it rains. And I know there have been some solutions in the south side area that include parking lots and other things. I just, I think there's some concern about how those things work, and what impacts they have on people's quality of life when things do get filled up and when they do flood, and how long they stay that way. So, that's one of the concerns that's out there. And I believe that having some additional review of that in some way by ZBA and possibly by other bodies could be helpful in avoiding some pitfalls along the way.
Just to help me clarify, you're suggesting that ZBA be required to review all of the rezoning, so to a different, to like more density, or middle housing, or to whatever?
Well,
I'm not sure I understand exactly how far you would go there.
I think the first dot point that we see here is requires ZBA variance for general suburban would be.
That is a variance to the impervious cover?
Yeah, right. That they would review variances to impervious cover.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so that's a kind of a good example, right? Like, we can apply the technical expertise on our side and say, okay, we're willing to grant a variance to what's in the ordinance. But in this case, if you wanted ZBA or someone to review it to say, even if we believe the technical side of it, is it with the intent or what the council or the community wants, that would be why you would do it.
I have some questions coming from this perspective here. Having been in a situation in Southside where we're putting decks and parking pads and things in place, we ran up against the impervious cover limit, and ironically, it was a gap deck that put us over. I jokingly say, routinely, Anthony tells me no all the time. And when I called to see, can we get some kind of variance, or, it fell within the administrative ability for him to be able to say, yeah, we'll grant you the administrative, variance on that. He's like, I'll never give a variance on impervious cover. I think it was pretty much that firmly stated. Am I wrong? Anyway, so, I know staff holds really true to keeping the impervious cover limits that exist to be honored. I'm not sure on the building side of things, if you tell someone they need to go get the detention engineered, which we did for a residential lot in Southside, that's a substantial cost, especially on a residential project. And then you tell them that they need to take that and get it approved by the ZBA. which is not a board of engineers. You're taking it to people that don't have that technical knowledge after you've required someone to go out and get an engineer certify that this will meet the detention requirements. I think it's adding an unnecessary layer of review. I'm not questioning whether or not we should address what those requirements should be, but I think the desire to modify that requirement is one that is not readily met with agreement by staff, or they want it to be engineered or meet the requirement. They're not handing out variances easily.
Other comments? Any, Mr. White, you have any? Or?
So I have a question, and I guess the part that kind of confuses me is this engineering part of the equation. If we're having engineering come in and do a report, are they not getting it right? Are they? I mean, you said that we have to go get a engineering drainage analysis done.
Sure.
Is that information not accurate? I mean, let me ask you another question to maybe back up a little bit. How many times on record has Bee Creek flooded in the last 15 to 20 years?
You get tomorrow off if you can answer that accurately off the top of your head.
We talk about drainage, and drainage is a big issue,
Yeah.
right? But how many times have we really have had a lot of flooding on Bee Creek?
Are we discussing the 100-year storm, the
That happened.
the 1% annual exceedance probability storm, or are we? I guess. So that's what the engineers are designing to, is that 100-year storm.
Yeah, so let me say, I think I'll take off my engineering hat here and say that, a lot of times when people come and talk, we're saying, yeah, the floodplain line, you're not even to the 100-year storm, which is what, if you just use the term flood, is kind of as an engineer what you think about the 100-year storm. But I think the people that come into this chambers are like, fantastic. From an engineering perspective, we accept that. But what we're concerned about is the water is still higher than we want it to be. And I think that's what the response is. Is there more drainage now coming down Bee Creek than there was? Is the question, which, again, Lucas can't answer that. None of us can, to the degree that people have. But from a engineering standpoint, what should happen is the post-development condition holistically should not create a worse condition than the pre-development. But I think the concern, and it is not just from people in the community, I think it's one of the concerns I have anytime you redevelop in old areas is, what is this doing? We don't have regional detention, we don't have those things, so like, how is this actually working? And this is the way that we administer that and look at that set of criteria. That criteria can be changed by this body to make it, better from a standpoint, or I guess in some ways, what the ZBA does that is a little different is the criteria for ZBA to grant a variance in general is a very high threshold, actually. So ZBA has an extreme amount of power in that it can actually do things that you can't even do, or I or Anthony can't do in our roles. But the requirements to grant a variance for ZBA are high. So it would just be a divergence from kind of how it works. But on our side, we take the technical specs, regardless of the situation, and say, does this work? Does the situation, even if it's different than maybe the way you calculate it this way, can you prove that it is still okay? So I don't know that I don't know that you can simplify it to say, well, hey, we're not getting outside the 100-year floodplain, partially because the way you calculate all that, I mean, way back in the day, I always say if you beat drainage numbers enough, you can make them do whatever you want. So we're using a set of criteria, but intensity of storms and all those things change. So we're just saying that basically we have a set of criteria. That's what we do it based on, and at least currently, we feel like that is a good way to do it. If the council wants to see something different, then then obviously that's the way you guys should go.
So one of the things that from a policy standpoint, we could require the ZBA to review these ordinances. I went back and
To what end?
I'm not advocating for that.
Yeah, and to be clear.
I'm not advocating.
You would only be the exceptions. So if someone comes to us and says, because of the unique nature of my site, I cannot meet the drainage ordinance, so I'm asking for an exception, and we review it and say, based on the technical criteria and engineering design, we feel like they have proven, a professional engineer has proven that they don't have a negative impact, at that point, then ZBA would review it. But in all likelihood, based on the criteria that ZBA must meet, they would not be able to meet it, even if the engineering matched up. So it wouldn't be like checking our math.
Helpful.
Actually, that confused me more. You said if the criteria were met, the ZBA could not approve it?
No, I'm just saying that the criteria for ZBA to approve a variance is different than the criteria for us to approve a variance for a drainage, in a drainage case. So it's not an administrative thing. If you're going to get a variance from ZBA, there are certain criteria you must meet, and that would be completely different than just saying.
So right now, you say you need to have this much impervious cover. If you can't meet this much impervious cover, you need to account for the water drainage off of this X amount that you cannot claim as impervious cover, go to an engineer and get them to tell you how to offset that.
Right.
I go to an engineer, get them to offset that.
And if we said that's okay, and then it went to a ZBA, there are still a set of criteria the ZBA would.
So
you got them right here.
So
This is-
beyond the technical requirements, you have additional things that the ZBA have to find are satisfied, and they're on the screen. So you have to show that
They're
there's
not
a
on mine.
hard.
Right down here.
You have to show
Oh.
that there is a hardship and a special condition on the property that other lots don't have. You have to show that you would lose enjoyment of a substantial property right if the variance isn't granted. These criteria are for all variances granted by the Zoning Board of Adjustments, and it is a high level that board has to meet in order to grant a variance. It's a quasi-judicial board, and the relief to that, those decisions are to a court of law. It's a very different finding than
So you're,
council or P&Z or staff.
so you can go with what's being proposed, I think I'm missing something here. With what's being proposed, you could go through the time, energy, and expense on a residential lot to engineer the drainage pattern, and then it could go to ZBA and still get voted down.
It almost certainly would. And just to give you an example, if you came to me with a project.
So what's
and-
the point in having someone go get an engineer? I mean, they're not cheap. On our little lot, it was $2,500, and then there was another probably $5 or $6 grand worth of concrete work we did to meet the requirement.
Yeah, it would basically force a much higher threshold for variance and drainage, and it would be similar to, again, it would be the same as the variances for CBA. But in an example that someone has this, they request a variance, we review all the engineering and say it's good. If you can't go meet those criteria, even though we agreed from a technical perspective that it will not create a drainage issue, then ZBA could not grant you the variance.
I do want to restate what Lucas had said earlier, that this is not a staff recommendation. We're bringing this information forward as an option because this is what was presented by the resident and what was asked to be heard by the council. So it's just
Okay.
an option, and this is what you all could do if you wanted to make this policy change.
Thank you for that clarification.
May I go to Mr. Smith?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. What I understand, the gist of what the recommendation does is it basically says you're not going to grant variances. I mean, it basically says if you're going to go in and do redevelopment, you're going to have to meet the impervious cover requirement. And I think that the thought behind that is that when you look at that map of the drainage basin and all of that middle housing that's been rezoned in older areas, and we're basically saying when we do that rezoning that we're willing to go from 55% impervious cover to 75% without a variance. Okay? But then, in order to get all of that parking onto that lot, you need a lot more than 75% impervious. And so you start creating detention in that parking lot in order to mitigate that increased runoff. And I think that the recommendation from CSAN is aimed at basically retaining that impervious cover, that maintaining that unimproved cover in redevelopment. They don't want the old neighborhood to be totally paved over. And I understand that sentiment. Detention ponds, especially concrete detention ponds, aren't as pretty as a lawn. I mean, you know, their landscaping is more pleasant to look at. It's cooler. There's a lot of advantages. But it does put a constraint on redevelopment in older parts of town. So you kind of got to weigh those things.
But detention doesn't necessarily mean more concrete. It could mean less. In our case, it did. We had weir outlets on the end of the drive that was already going to be there. It just dropped down a few inches in order to. Yeah. So I mean, I think they can exist peacefully with good design and thoughtful intent.
Yeah, and I think that's the system we have now, and that allows staff to look at that intent and look at that mitigation and say, good, you've met the need. And I think what the recommendation to require ZBA review is to make that harder to get. And I think that's the intent of it. And we're the policy people, so we can decide, do we want to make that harder to get, yes or no?
Do you have a conclusion on that?
No, I don't, not personally.
Okay, I just wanted to see if you wanted to finish that.
I mean, part of it was listening to the presentation and thinking, what is it that why are we hearing this? What is the intent behind this recommendation that's been presented to us? I mean, the staff is not recommending it. They're presenting what CSAN has proposed. And I understand, I mean, I think looking at impervious areas is important. But you know, particularly in redevelopment on a lot by lot case, that's tough. You know, and we might want to look policy-wise at in these areas, downstream of these areas where we're allowing redevelopment, should the city consider the development of regional detention to offset that redevelopment? And then that makes it easier to do the redevelopment, and it addresses the increased runoff that additional impervious area creates. But that's another policy thing.
And I want to reiterate, you would still be required detention potentially on site, just based on the conveyance detention, since it's a piecemeal lot by lot.
It's not just the floodplain, it is also the downstream facilities to handle that.
And we did run into this in 2023 when we passed the lot by lot grading ordinance that was to address some of this redevelopment issue.
Maybe this is a good time to invite Mr. Elliott, who raised this question for us in an earlier meeting, and he has signed up to speak on the item. It's not a public hearing, but I'll certainly be happy to have him speak at this point, because obviously we've circled back to some ideas that you have laid on the table, and we want to see where we're at today. Mr. Charles Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. and members of the city council. I appreciate all the hard work on this. I want to say up front a couple of things I think are not controversial. We can all agree on easily. Let's start there. We need investors to, we need to make sure investors have predictability. We want them to know what they're doing is going to return on their investment. It's a no-brainer. And we want development within the basin itself to be as straightforward as possible. So the question I would ask this council tonight is, do you think the information that was presented here gives you the information you need? Because we have to evaluate not only these drainage impacts, but we also have to understand the effects it's going to have on housing. It's inescapable. You can't separate the two. And we got to do that for both students and for long-term residents. That's our community now, those two. So I guess I'm going to fast forward because I'm going to be out of time very quickly. I'm going to fast forward to what I.
No, I'll give you whatever time you need.
Oh, thank you, sir. Well, then I'm going
Within reason.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. That's kind of you. But I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to what I think the real outcome of tonight should be. My opinion, you may disagree. I understand that. But I think we need more public input because before we make a decision, we need more public input because no one here knew what was going to be recommended before we got here. And it was, I wouldn't say confusing, but this is an exceedingly difficult issue. And getting it right matters. It matters because our drainage policies and our zoning policies actually should be pulling in the same direction. And that direction should be one that ensures students continue to have access to affordable housing. And it should protect the investments that long-term residents have, that they've made in their families, in their neighborhoods, in their businesses, and in the entire community as a whole. So in my view, that is really the heart of the matter. And I know this council recognizes that whatever decision you make is going to have long-lasting consequences beyond drainage. Your decision is going to influence whether future development occurs, where it occurs. It's going to inevitably create incentives that will lead to additional impervious coverage. And the demands for new infrastructure will be ongoing in this whole process. The effects are difficult to predict, nearly impossible. Well, I wouldn't say that. I'm not an engineer, but it feels impossible to me. But I know we have great engineers on our staff. No question about it. I would put our staff up against anyone's. But you know, many of us believe, that's why many of us believe that we should look beyond the operational problems that are immediately before us. And we should consider the broader strategic implications. I believe the key question for our city is whether our drainage policies and our housing policies are working together rather than working independently. So our request is simple. Before adopting any basin-specific stormwater policy, evaluate its impact on housing production in the areas where we expect to accommodate future growth. And that future growth includes housing for students and long-term residents. We need to reduce uncertainty for investors. We need to maintain sound drainage standards. And we need to do both of those in a way that protects the housing needs of our entire community. And if we do that, I believe that everyone will be totally supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Appreciate your comments. Other comments, Mr. Smith, you want to?
One question. How do these recommendations address that problem?
Is that to me or?
Whoever knows the answer.
Well, may I take a stab at it?
Yes.
To answer that, I think you have to realize that the problem we have seems to be, to some extent or to a large extent, that engineered exceptions today they're automatically granted so long as a properly credentialed engineer can prove or say we have detention. And it feels a little bit like it's happening too fast everywhere. So, so the recommendation if you're talking about the recommendation to require ZBA variance for general suburban, let me say this. I've been doing my best to educate myself on this as fast as I can. And I think I said we should require a ZBA variance for all GS. But a lot of smart people have told me, and I now believe that we need to be able to allow higher impervious coverage exceptions in GS. It's just that we need to restrict them. But if we're going to grow the Texas A&M population like we are, we want students to want to move into, I think, middle housing for the right reasons, not because we want them to, but because it's the right place, and they will, when they look at all the facts, say, that's where I want to be. And that means more than 75% impervious coverage exceptions. I mean, we already have examples of 90 and 95, and I'm not arguing we should not. I think we should be willing to entertain that as long as we can prove detention. But what it helps, I know that's not quite the answer, but it seems like to me we also have to protect the whole community. I guess that's my answer. The whole community is not just students, it's long-term residents.
And how would these changes affect the long-term property owners?
Well,
who aren't needing a variance.
Who are not.
I mean, they're just already there.
Well, I can't speak to the entire community, but I know that I can say this. The set of those residents who are at the mouth of where the basin empties out will certainly be protected with, the right kind of restrictions and the right kind of detention.
Well, the current drainage policy in essence says when someone goes in to develop either a empty, greenfield development or redevelopment, that they're going to design the drainage so that the drainage that leaves that site is the same amount that left it before development. That's the policy. Now, how you get that done is where the engineers come in. So in terms of addressing that way downstream floodplain thing, that policy does that. So I'm not sure what change it is that you're asking for.
Well, respectfully, I'm not sure I agree that policy does that completely and correctly all the time, everywhere. I may be wrong.
Well, okay, the question then is, the policy says that that's what it does. Now, what you're saying is reality doesn't always accomplish what the policy is asking for. Is that what you're? getting at, I guess?
I think that, I wouldn't say reality, because reality implies now, today, in the moment. We are facing something that's entirely different that College Station's never faced. What we're facing is a university that is growing at 2,000 students per year. We're facing circumstances we've never had. So the things we're doing that may be working well today, I'm not so sure they're going to continue working the way they're supposed to work. I just think we need more public input. We need more thoughts about it. Maybe it will, but there's reason for concern.
I agree there's reason for concern because the increased density is going to have an impact. And it's not just going to be in drainage, it's going to be in traffic, it's going to be in garbage, it's going to be in utility demand, it's going to be in all those things, and those are all problems that our city staff are working on putting policies in place to address. And so it isn't just drainage that increased density impacts.
Right.
And, but I don't know. I mean, more public input. I mean, all the public input we can get, I would be glad to hear. But I'm not sure where the CSAN recommendation, how it strategically targets the drainage problem and gets us to protecting those downstream property owners and encouraging that middle housing development. I mean, those are all things that we want to have happen. Those are outcomes that I absolutely agree with.
Me too.
So I just am not seeing the connect.
All I would ask, I guess, tonight of the council is just simply this, to not make a decision tonight, and instead to have more discussion, get more public input. Perhaps we will decide in the end that we're good. But I think the situation is serious enough to merit a lot of due diligence, and especially because it's a different situation we're going to be in over the next 5 to 10 years than we've been in over the last 5 to 10 years.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your willingness to stay with us on this, Mr. Elliott. Mr. Smith, I apologize for kind of cutting off that, but you developed a pretty good discussion. There's several others that may wish to have a comment. I've got a couple of thoughts, questions I've got to sort out too. You have anything, Mr. Wright? Want to go back to either one of you?
I have one question.
Ms. Mcllhaney, you're on the floor.
Mr. Harper, you indicated at the beginning that this was a meeting between council people, community members, neighborhood people. Is that?
External meeting between city
external
staff and a council representative and CSAN.
And when was that?
I mean, this is the first I've heard that there was a discussion that was had. If I missed an invite, I apologize.
Yeah, well, Anthony's walking up there. I would just also like to point out, this is public input. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, workshops are by their nature public input. So I think sometimes that gets lost. And also, like, I mean, from a technical engineering perspective, and fortunately we have much better engineers than me, that's not really I mean, you can have public input about what criteria you set or, what you want to see, but that's not really a debate. And I sitting here thinking I may confuse this issue even more for people, but I want people to understand you're actually more likely to see a delta in or an increase or something in the already allowable limits than you are if you require an engineering study. So in some ways, this is targeting the thing that is more closely examined, versus what you're allowed by right, which a few years ago we came in and made some modifications to what you're allowed to do by right for this specific reason, basically saying there are things happening that are allowed and they are causing problems. And so what we want to do is eliminate your ability to do that on the books, and you're going to need to come prove to us that what you're doing doesn't cause a problem. And the example I'll give you, if you remember, there was like basically 2 lots and one was way built up. And so we have done some of this. I think you're actually going after it with this, like the one that has to prove it up even more.
Question you had.
Yes, sir. Councilmember, just to answer your question. So they had made the request at the Here Visitors.
Who's they?
CSAN.
Oh, CSAN, okay.
So CSAN made the request at Here Visitors. There was a council future agenda item requested. That next week, I sat down, met with Fred DePriest and Mr. Elliott, kind of as their representatives. We kind of talked through what it is that they were really asking with the presentation. We talked about some aspects of it that were good ideas, but ship as far as sailed. We should have done that 100 years ago. And we ended up on saying, hey, this is what we're going to bring forward for them to consider, is this opportunity for ZBA variances. Going back to some history on impervious cover, there was a lot of public input around that process, and specifically with the development community. We had been seeing this issue, right, on people paving 100%, doing nothing to do it. So we worked that out, created impervious cover, and this exemption we're talking about was done by the council. So that we had these limits. Originally, it was 55, 60. I think Lucas has them here. These were the original limits we had, and there was no engineered exception just by staff. It was naturally, as originally written before feedback, you would have to have gone and gotten a ZBA variance for every little thing. There was no staff approval. That got a lot of kickback that it would slow down the process, it'd be more money, potentially get a no. There was a lot of concerns from that when we did public engagement at the time. So what we worked out was this option, hey, if you engineer it, just like you do any other site plan, commercial site, whatever, we can be good with that. So they have to engineer it, our staff engineers, they review it, and then we get there. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, really what this is requesting is, it's not an engineering question, this is a policy question. So this is, do you want to make it harder to build a house in general suburban or other zoning districts than in middle housing, or do you want to make it they're harder in different basins, specific basins? Do you want to add more steps to make that process more, I wouldn't even say, not inhibited, but because they have to do the same work. They would still have to do the studies, they'd have to do all that work, but there's now an additional level of approval they have to seek outside of just a staff process.
So this is the first time council's been a part of the discussion then, other than that agenda?
Other than the agenda item, yeah.
Okay. So just a couple thoughts to put back out for CSAN to consider. I know we had a client that we just finished their home. I know you probably know exactly who I'm talking about, that the drainage is so inconsistent in Southside as it is. It was not built with anything in mind when it first started. And you do a lot of, I mean, it's a trick. It's a trick to make sure that everything's draining as it should, where it should, and no more than it should. It was enough complicated for this particular client that the adjacent neighbor came up for sale, so they bought that house so that they could control the drainage on that property coming into their own. Unfortunately, not everybody's in a position to do that, and nor are neighbors always willing to let you correct the drainage on, your lot, their lot, so yours can work. So there are a lot of challenges that aren't just getting the impervious cover right, especially in our older established neighborhoods. I am very much a fan of, if we're going to break whatever the policy sets the cover at, letting an outside third-party engineer an appropriate solution and letting that stand. I don't think it needs to go to a body with a subjective mandate along 9 criteria when you've got a document that says the hydrology supports if we can slow the water coming off this property down in this manner in lieu of having grass or dirt or rocks. So anyway, long story short, I do agree with you. Drainage is a massive issue that is impacting multiple areas of the community, but the part that I'm very much against is stuff moving forward to the ZBA because it's a guaranteed death.
Let me make a few comments on this, novice that I am on a lot of the technical engineering details, but I think really what Mr. Elliott's reflecting on and the reason it's a policy issue is there's competing objectives here. And he brings affordable housing, density. We got to grow more density to satisfy the student population that wants to live closer to the campus. Much of those redevelopment projects for going back to Mr. Shafer's concerns, more than 4 unrelateds, which could be 6 or 7, means you got to find some parking. That means you got to pave over a little bit more. But it's in general suburban. It's not in townhomes. It's not been rezoned. It's in general suburban in that area. All of it, a lot of it is general suburban. So you've got these mixed objectives. To me, managing the flood, the runoff from these properties as they get more dense ought to be near the top. Everybody can put a priority list, but that seems to me to be near the top. Now, if you got an engineer that can design on that piece of property, even if it's converted to 5 or 6 residents in that traditional 4-family detached home, even with some expansion, if they can show me that you can capture that water on the property and detain it within our standards, I think that is okay. But frankly, something's got to give in this whole thing, and that's really what Mr. Elliott's struggling with. What's got to give? I'm as much about density and the growth of the future growth of the city as being increasing density as anybody. But if you're doing that by creating a bunch of impossible redevelopment proposals to Anthony's staff, where he can't, and the engineers can't bring the data that says I can detain this, then, I think we push the envelope about as far as we can, unless somebody wants to come back and rezone a whole area. Now, we've done that with the middle housing, so that's kind of a unique one, but if you want more affordable housing, more density, that means you got to have more redevelopment. That means you got more impervious cover. That leads to more runoff. That's not acceptable to me. And if you can find an engineering way, which apparently that's what the staff is charged with looking at, is whether the applicant is coming forward with a clear enough design to show that they can handle the runoff, then I'm okay with what we've got. And I agree with Ms. Mcllhaney that I don't see burdening ZBA with yet another decision framework where they use different criteria to begin with that are much more general and speak to a lot of different kinds of things. So I acknowledge that Mr. Elliott's brought a real conundrum to us. He doesn't have a good answer. I don't have a good answer. Probably it needs more thought, more careful consideration, but I don't know enough about whether we're really causing greater downstream flooding or not through these increasing densities. We haven't had enough of the middle housing redevelopment yet. We've had some of it. And actually, that's going to be interesting to watch down on Richard Street, where you've got a tremendous amount of impervious cover. I know they've got a detention area down at the end of that on Crest Street that's going to capture a lot of that, but hopefully the engineers have got that figured out, and we got engineers in this audience that have probably worked on that. I don't see a reason yet that I want to impose some change in the regulations, because I don't understand that that the impacts are there. But I do believe you got to reduce, maintain and limit the amount of runoff on all of this middle housing and general suburban that is being redeveloped lot by lot to increase density to serve a market need for housing for people closer to campus. It's there. As far as putting priorities on each of those goals, that we ought to have policy goals, affordable housing, density, redevelopment, and impervious cover. To me, you got to manage the runoff, number one. And it sounds like they're working on a technical model, an engineering model that is the best we got at this point. So that's my 2 cents worth. Maybe we go back to Mr. Shafer. He'd been quietly listening, but had a lot of important thoughts originally, and where do you come out on this?
I'm okay to let it sit right now.
Excuse me?
I'm okay to let it sit right now.
I'll let it sit right now. Any other, Mr. White, Wright, Mr. Wright? Mr. White, I know he's spoken.
No, I've already spoke. I mean, this is a workshop item, so this is
Yep.
just kind of for information. I was, one of the questions is, when do we review this? If we want to make changes, when do we do it? I believe you mentioned the change was last made, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? Is that about the time these were reviewed and stuff? 5 years. So I mean, yeah, this is great information. I think that when the time comes, we will review it, and if we have to make changes, we will.
I guess our direction then is to monitor and observe. I think these mixed goals that we've got out there, and that's what Mr. Elliott's really referring to, is listening more to citizens to see if every citizen's got his own set of priorities. I think what we've said here is that our priorities still are, look, we've changed the percentage of impervious cover. That was designed specifically to allow a little more flexibility to adapt to a middle housing and even the redevelopment of general suburban. If staff comes back to us and says, we're denying 90% of these because they aren't able to meet the standards, then we'd have to look at it again. But I don't think I'm hearing that at this point. But I understand the pressures on Northgate that Mr. Elliott's talking about. I mean, not Northgate, but South Side and closer to campus, even on the east side. Smaller and smaller lots, bigger and bigger houses, less pervious cover is going to be a problem, and we got to observe and manage that. So, if I can, you got the consensus of the group, I think, not to move forward with any changes at this point, but we'll keep reviewing it and listening to public comments. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, where are we now? We can move on to regular agenda. Ms. Leonard. It's item 8.1, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the 2026-2027 ad valorem tax rate and calling a public hearing on a proposed ad valorem tax rate for FY 26-27. Ms. Leonard.
Mary Ellen Leonard, Director of Fiscal Services. This item is for y'all to set the tax rate that you would like to hold the public hearing at. It's not for you to vote on a tax rate. It's for you to set the rate that you want to hold a public hearing at. But before we do that, I have some information to provide to you. First of which has to do with the certified values that we received from the appraisal district. This slide should look a little familiar. It's the same slide that we discussed in the budget workshop, where basically if you look at the percentages, we have about 3% of an increase in new value added to the city, and we have an existing value change. I told you at workshops that it was about 1%. That's kind of gone down a little bit, and that would leave us, or it was 2%, and that would leave us with certified values increasing at about 1%. So as you can see, the change in the existing values has gone up a little bit, but we still have a decrease in the existing values. What you are not seeing is what is on that first line. What is on that first line is the certified values that were provided to you last year, which was $16.2 billion. In your packet, I provided to you the tax rate calculation that comes from the tax office. That tax rate calculation worksheet has a couple of lines that you have to add together that get you to the prior year certified tax values after the adjustments have been made from the ARB review and litigation. And that is where we start this year. Those two lines that you would add together would be line 3, which is 12.7 billion, and line 6C, which is 1.4 billion. That is
That's not on the screen, right?
That is not on the screen, that's in your packet. That is a decrease in the certified taxable values to start the year. That decrease is approximately $2 billion, about 8-9%, somewhere in there. Because of the decrease in existing values, what we started the beginning of the year with, plus the change in just the 2026 values that I'm showing on the screen, what the tax office has provided to us in their calculation worksheet is that the no new revenue rate for the city of College Station goes up by 1.64 cents. Our voter approval rate adjusted for sales tax, the city of College Station has a sales tax rate of 8.25%. Because we made an election back in the day that has our tax rate for sales a little bit higher than what the state is, that means that our property tax rate gets lowered. So they adjust for all of that in that big old tax return that I included in your packet. The voter approval adjusted for sales tax rate, which includes that 3.5% increase, is 1.83 cents. That is the rate that staff is proposing and included in the proposed budget. Then the voter approval rate with the increment, which is the amount that the tax rate is below the voter approval rate that is not adopted by the city, would be an increase of 2.59 cents. We are not recommending that you adopt or set that rate for the public hearing at that higher voter approval rate with the increment. When we went through all of the worksheets that were provided, we discovered that with the help of the tax office, that Property Tax Code 26.04D-1 requires that the county tax assessor, who is the designated officer, use the forms that are prescribed by the state comptroller. Those forms that are prescribed by the state comptroller say that the foregone revenue for 2024 is carried forward each year for the entities to use again and again if they haven't previously used it. That means that you can go over the intent of the state legislature of that 3.5% increase. We do not think that that is a wise decision, so staff is recommending that the voter approval rate adjusted for the sales tax, which is just the 3.5%, is what would be the highest rate that we would recommend that you hold the public hearing at. That rate would be 53.0254.
Can I get a clarification on that last column? You say certified FY26. You mean certified based on the 26 tax roll, but it's really for the fiscal year 2027, correct?
Yes, so the tax form that you get, because it starts January 1st of 2026, says 2026, that's the tax form I provided to you. That's why it says 2026.
But we're talking about a tax rate that we would adopt in 2 weeks, whatever it is for the FY27.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood the labeling on that column and why it's labeled the way it is. Other questions? Are you finished?
I am all done.
Well, you're not done yet. You got a couple more.
I know.
And then you got to do all the wrap up on, but we'll leave that alone. Any questions for staff on this one?
So just to make sure I understand, we are adopting tonight the maximum.
No.
No, you're not adopting anything.
Okay, we are scheduling a hearing.
Right.
If we go with your recommendation.
Correct.
At 53.0254 cents.
Correct.
That is not what the final tax rate will be. We will decide that at our next council meeting. Is that correct?
Correct, after the public hearing.
Okay, so that is just the maximum amount that we could charge. We could definitely go down on that in 2 weeks.
If you go down on that in 2 weeks, depending upon what rate you choose,
Yes.
then what would end up happening is we would end up changing the budget. The amount that we included in the budget is 53.0254. So when we did the budget workshops and included were the expenses for the 8 additional police officers and the concrete crew and all of those things, we used the revenue at 53.0254.
If we want to have a discussion about capital projects in 2 weeks, and we modify that amount, will that change that tax rate?
That will not change this tax rate. What I would recommend you would do at that particular point in time is to look at the capital projects that are included in that budget.
Right.
And you could indicate at that point in time whether or not up to 3% of the total budget, whether or not you wanted to remove those projects from this schedule. If you have a project that is scheduled out in the future, for example, there was some discussion about Hensel Park or the University pedestrian crossing, because budgets are done 1 year at a time, there is zero impact whatsoever. The debt rate that is included on the screen above you is for the debt that we have already issued. So changing the capital projects will have zero impact on the tax rate this year.
I would also point out, if you want to discuss capital projects, you can do that tonight because it relates to basically the budget and the tax rate and all these things. So you don't have to wait till next week.
Yeah,
It's
we
the
do
same
have 2
item.
people who want to speak tonight, but we moved them to this item because they were somewhat related. Let me just clarify, on that meeting on the 27th, that we have yet to call, but that's the purpose of this item. The final budget will have to be adopted as well, correct?
Correct. There'll be,
So
I think it's
separate
4
vote.
items I'm bringing in
Yeah.
front of you and 1 that's on consent.
So it isn't just setting the tax rate, but it's setting the budget, and to keep it structurally sound is what they're talking about, to make sure that it's a structurally sound budget. If you reduce the tax rate at that meeting below what you're going to call a meeting for, then you've got to find money in the budget to remove, whether it's projects, only capital projects that you could remove are ones that you are appropriating money in FY 2027 to carry out. And if
Yeah,
you want
I want
Right.
to say it again because I think Mary Ellen pointed it out, and I wouldn't say I've heard a lot, but I hear from people that confuse this issue a lot. And you are required by law to set the debt side of your tax rate to cover the debt, the cost of the debt you have issued. So that is what the debt rate that is what this is for. So if you go and say, we're going to do no capital projects in the future of College Station, the debt side of that tax rate is not going to change because it is required by law to cover what you have already issued.
But it would change next year when we
could be-
had the
it could change in the
discussion.
future.
Because that depends on how much we
Yeah,
put in the
it could
capital
change in the
budget for this
future.
year.
There's a lot of things that would change the debt rate next year. It's not just removing the capital projects, it's the schedule and timing of what those capital projects are. It is the interest rate that we issued the debt at. All of that goes into what is the payment for principal and interest that we have to make in the immediate next year. That's what sets the debt side of the tax rate.
So a conversation about capital projects, we can have tonight, we could have next meeting, but it won't have any bearing on the budget,
I mean,
on tax rate.
It will
tax
not
rate
have
for
a
this
bearing
year,
on
right.
the tax
On the
rate. That
tax
is
rate,
correct.
yes.
Any other questions?
Is this a vote for the record or not until the next?
Not yet. If you wanted to listen to you said that there were some individuals that had signed up to speak.
Yeah,
If you would like them to come up and speak, then you can listen to their input, and then I can come back and give you the wording that you have to say.
Okay, I'm not sure. Thank you very much. I will turn to the two individuals, and I'm not sure that they are specifically speaking about tax rate or whatever, but it sounds like both of them want to speak about something in the budget. So we thought this would be a good place. I'll start with Mr. Lloyd Davis, be followed by Chandler Arden, and you have 3 minutes each.
Thank you. Lloyd Davis. I live in Winding Creek subdivision of the College Station ETJ, and I do want to speak on capital projects. I was signed up for here visitors until a few minutes ago, so we'll go from there. Doesn't really matter.
For yourself or CSAN?
I am speaking for myself. I've gone over it with CSAN, but I didn't show them the body of the work, so I'm just calling it from me at this point. I wanted to start off by saying that I've been working with staff on some of this, and they've had genuinely been helpful and responsive when I've asked particular questions, especially about the Public Works facility. I appreciate that. It was good. But even with that, there are a lot of questions that I think remain unanswered, and that before you guys can make decisions, they need to be nailed down and answered, because I am very concerned about locking in the capital budget and what that might mean for the city's ability to capitalize on what I consider to be the biggest opportunity facing our city in years with TerraFab. The $55 million budgeted for Public Works building is construction only, does not include the land. That's likely because the land cost isn't settled yet. A soil study has been done on the Rock Prairie site, but the results haven't been shared publicly, and I'd like to think that's because staff is preparing to brief you directly rather than release it piecemeal. Makes sense to me. Either way, site preparation and Rock Prairie Road remain significant unknowns in this budget, and they could be killers for us in the years ahead. Comparison that's worth considering, if you look at the FY26 capital budget, shows $10.1 million invested in rebuilding Krennic Tap Road in reinforced concrete. I was unable to get a definitive answer as to whether Rock Prairie would require certainly where the Rock Prairie that has already been built meets those same higher reinforced concrete standards that were required at Krennic Tap or not. And of course, if it's in the budget for the new portion of Rock Prairie that hasn't yet been constructed. Two very big considerations to this. And we both know that they need to be at the same standard, given that we are rebuilding Krennic Tap because of all the heavy construction, all the heavy equipment. Added up, and the project could run $10 million over budget if it's land cost alone, or $40 or more million in a worst case scenario once soil and road work are factored in. My ask is simple: pass the O&M and INS budgets as you see fit, since the city has to have that, but table the CIP, all of it, until these numbers are actually clear and there's a real plan for the opportunity to capture.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. We get the general idea, and I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Mr. Chandler Arden. We also arbitrarily moved you, although I know you're not going to talk on the tax rate, but something related to the budget, so we felt like a better place here. Mr. Arden.
Thank you for having me. I'm Chandler Arden. I live in Wood Creek in College Station. I probably was not as eloquent as Mr. Davis is, but I'll do my best. Some numbers to consider about the Public Works facility. From what I could find online, it appears that the proposed building could be somewhere between 55,000 square feet and close to 90,000 square feet between fleet space, shop space, and administrative space. The proposed budget is $55 million. I wanted to compare some. I was like, what are we getting for $55 million? So I chose a few things around town to kind of try to compare. One was the BMW auto dealership. It's about 26,000 square feet on a little over 4 acres. And in 2026, it had an assessed value of $6.4 million. I just kind of doubled the assessed value to come up with maybe somewhere close to what it would cost to build, which would be about 12 to 13 million. I believe it was built pre-COVID. Performance Truck, which is a facility built on in 2019 on Highway 21, lists about 52,000 square feet on almost 10 acres, an evaluation of 6.8 million. Again, let's double the price, and that's about 13 million. Performance Truck, if you don't know, services and sells large vehicles. A little bit closer to home is Costco. It was built in 2022. It's 160,000 square feet of heated and cooled space with a fuel station, huge concrete parking lot, detention area, generator, kitchens, and a lot of refrigeration. This building sits on 18.6 acres, has a 2026 valuation of just under 13 million. With a little research, I found that a new Costco to build would be between $15 and $25 million to build today. I'm sure I don't have all the details of the proposed Public Works building, but that seems to be a pretty large gap between something like a Costco and what I could find online for the proposed Public Works building. In my opinion, now does not seem to be the time to burden the taxpayers with a maxed out credit card like the 2027 budget appears to be. While College Station has always benefited from a stable economy, housing sales have slowed this year, valuations have gone up, and our residents are facing fuel costs that seem to change every day, among other things. We need you guys, council, to have visionary leadership and make some difficult decisions that would assure our citizens that council is looking out for our best interest. We need to focus on the fundamentals of city services so that we may be ready to capitalize on the recent potential for economic activity coming our way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I might, you can take your seat. I'm not going to speak to you. It's more general information. Yes, there's items in the budget, and those items are in the budget with a pretty good estimate of what it's going to take. But there are a lot of steps between the time you put the budget in place with an allocation, an appropriation to certain building projects, road projects, parks projects, whatever they are. This council, though, will not approve a contract to build that if the money is not available and we cannot see how it fits in. And if and the staff may push back themselves. If it comes in over budget, they'll say, okay, what do we take out of this? How do we tighten up the engineering side of this building, reduce what we are asking for right now, put off the additional addition to the building for another 3 to 5 years? There's lots of opportunities between this budget, the appropriations they're being asked for, which are representative of what we believe or what staff believes and they're recommending to us is appropriate to put in the budget. But we've got a lot of steps along the way where this body will, they got to finally vote on a contract to build something. And that's when you match that cost up against the amount of money that's been appropriated. And I would say over the years I've been on council, the staff have been pretty good at coming close to the mark. Sometimes you're over, but a lot of times recently we've been under what was estimated for the budget, and so you got some savings in those things. So I agree that having a number in the budget is imprecise sometimes and can easily be targeted, but this council will not approve a contract until they see where the money is and how it matches up against what was available. This simply sets aside the amount of money that's available, and we live within it. So we'll see whether that, your point about maybe this is over budget, well, let's take a look and see what it's going to cost to really do it. Okay.
Mayor,
I just wanted to add that thought to the fact that this is not the final say on any particular project. Each of those will get a lot of scrubbing.
Yeah, and I was just going to make I had a couple of notes, and if council has questions, but since we have people here that might be interested, and I've heard some of these before, I think it's important that we kind of outline some of these factual pieces of information and stuff that's got brought up. We've got a few items, I think, in the future. Terrafab was mentioned, and there's discussion about that. I can hit that. I do want to point out for anybody listening, there are multiple presentations that staff has done not only through the budget process, but specific to the Public Works facility where we outline what's in there. I don't think it's correct to say there's no land cost. When we don't put a line item for land, it's because one of the sites being considered is land that we currently own. We have another one, and so that could change it. But to your point, we're working within a general constraint of what that is. I do think it's great public input when like one person's like it's going to be double what you thought, and one person is like it should be half. That's kind of where we're landing. I want to point out for people to understand how we come to those numbers. We employ architects, engineers, and contractors. In this case, the construction manager at risk, when that project comes or any project comes, all of the ones that we built, they bid it out competitively. And so the market will decide what it costs to build it. And I would be thrilled if we can build it for $30 million. If you go and compare other public works facilities that have been built around the state, you won't see anything in that range that's anywhere close to what we would have. As the city manager, I've seen somebody say like, oh, I think the city manager is pushing this. Yes, I am, along with a lot of other people, including our 2022 bond committee, because it is absolutely a need. And I think it's a great point that I have seen, what are we doing about Terrafab and what's going to come around? And if you hear, even tonight, the things I hear most about are streets, drainage, solid waste, and traffic, all of which fit neatly into one department, Public Works. The department with the oldest building on a site that is 50+% floodplain, that is making things work at an extremely high level. So the money is absolutely an issue anytime you're dealing with what you're going to have to spend. But it's no different than a police station. It's no different than a fire station. It's no different than these other things. This is something that's needed to be able to provide those level of services. The item about Krennic Tap has come up. Krennic Tap, originally 20 plus years ago, if you listen to the folks who run Public Works, wasn't really built correctly, and it's in terrible shape. It was a concrete road about 6.5 inches thick. It is being put back at 8 inches thick, but I think some of what's been said, people have misconstrued, is that we had to rebuild it and make it this big road because of the Public Works facility. It's being built by the standard that we build all of the roads. As an example, Lincoln, which has no Public Works facility on it, is 9 inches of concrete. So 9 inches of concrete versus 8 inches next to Public Works. So just so everybody understands that. Rock Prairie, asphalt versus concrete. And again, won't get into all the engineering, but we drive big trucks on asphalt all the time. The reason we have asphalt out there is because of the nature of the road, turning, those type of things. Is there a turn lane or not? Those type of, but there's no big impact there. We drive those roads all the time already, and one of the main roads we drive to Bavisma is asphalt. Holds up extremely well. So those things are all considered. Going to kind of my last thing that has maybe been put out there that maybe was sort of mentioned now, but I think is a question people have is, we have this Terrafab thing coming, and we got to have the ability to adjust for it. Again, my contention would be Public Works would be one of the first things you would want to do. I'd remind everyone that our water, wastewater, and electric, which sometimes people talk about, are separate funds. They're funded by rates, and so if you're talking about those things, that's one thing. In this budget, as it's allocated, and I think the mayor did a good job talking about this is a plan. It's not always set. Yes, the Public Works facility is a $55 million line item in here. I'd point out that if you look at Midtown and baseball, between the agreement we're looking at there, that's a $40 million item. We also have $36 million in what I would call general projects. So if you look at things like drainage, sidewalks, signals and intersections, future street rehabs or extensions, and or if you even include the university extension, that's a $52 million line item. That's not designated for any one specific thing. It's designated for future needs that may be there, specifically because we plan strategically and adjust, whether it's for the growth of A&M or growth of economic development. So those items are in there. And if all that doesn't make you feel a little better, if you look at the budget beyond what our statutory and policy requirements are for fund balance, and beyond what we've recommended to have in the budget also set aside for grant matching opportunities or economic development, there is still $42.4 million in unassigned, which is, as we say in our presentation, amounts available for future contingencies and one-time requests. So I would just want everyone to hear that is concerned about what this budget looks like. If you look at it as we're spending all this money and it just is gone, that's I guess it's up to you whether you think a public works facility or a baseball or that should happen. But it is actually positioning us perfectly, as we have done in the past, for anything strategic that will come. It has a ton of flexibility, and what it does is it shows you exactly what you can do within the current constraints. But again, I'd just like to point out, after all of this, $42 million is still sitting on the budget unassigned.
Okay, we're asked for a pretty simple agenda item tonight, and we will have a public hearing on the tax rate that will be named tonight in some motion. And further discussion at a public hearing is an appropriate place for more of this kind of discussion. Given that as a general background, are there any specific questions you have about tonight's agenda item? Calling this, and I'd like to ask Mayor Pro Tem Mr. Wright to state the motion, but before he does, is there any other questions, Mr. Wright? Mr. White? You asked him several, so I just want to make sure you.
No, I have more questions.
About the budget?
But it's more about the budget. It's more about the overall budget rather than the tax rate.
Well,
I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Let me ask you a question. Oh, go ahead. No. So let me ask you a question. Because I get asked by a lot of citizens this as well. So our debt capacity will not be able to increase until 2034.
So there's a lot that goes into that word debt capacity.
Okay.
There's an awful lot of math.
Okay.
So what goes into that debt capacity is, one, a policy decision that has been made by the city of College Station that our debt rate, the amount that we will hold to pay on our debt in any given year, will be consistent year to year. And if you look at the first line on this chart, you can see, within some fluctuations of the fact that I'm literally guessing at what the appraisal values and the litigation results are going to be when I have to do the budget, we're pretty close to holding that flat. That's assumption number one. Assumption number two is we have a 5-year funded plan based off of what we know is rolling off the debt rate and what we know we need to issue for projects that council has directed us to pursue. So based off of that, if there is no change, zero change in valuations, that means BCAD will not increase or decrease your valuations, then we have no more capacity based off of the debt, the philosophy that our debt service rate will stay flat and that we are going to do all of these projects exactly as scheduled, which is piece number 3. We do not perform in the actual real world related to what is scheduled on a project. Things like rain happens. Things like we cannot get the subcontractors happen. So projects get pushed out. Some projects get pushed up. Some projects get pushed out. A perfect example of that was what we came to you to issue in debt just 2 weeks ago. We asked for permission to issue $37 million worth of debt for the water wells. When I stood before you and set the budget the year before, it was $90 million. So we asked for permission for $90 million, and we only issued 37. That creates capacity. We didn't need everything that we had budgeted or planned for. So right now, if nothing changes in my assumptions related to the budget development, there would be no additional capacity. But I will tell you right now, my assumptions are wrong. It will change.
I would also point out that while, again, we are right, this is a planning exercise, the way that we do this. So in 2022, when we came to the bond advisory committee, because we were going to have a bond on all these projects, what we did, we ran the same thing. We said, if we make an assumption that we're going to keep the same debt rate, which again, council can change, and as I've heard said before, if some opportunity, a Terrafab or whatever it is comes up that's so great that we need to go out and go to debt, council can issue more debt, or you can go to the community and ask the community to issue debt. But what we do is operate under the assumption, hey, keep the debt rate as it is. And we said to that bond advisory committee, okay, so you've got this amount of capacity in the next 5 years. And if you look across the state and across the country, 5-year increments are typical for bonds. They all do the same thing. And if that number is 50 million or 100 million, or if you're some of these bigger cities, $1 billion, then the council or a bond committee or whoever's looking at it says, here's how we would like to spend that money. And then you decide if you want to spend it all. So basically, we did the same thing 5 years ago. Now, that some of those bonds didn't pass, so there was capacity that rolled over because they didn't pass. And it would be the same thing if this council didn't use capacity, then that would just continue on. Or if you wanted to raise the debt rate, more capacity. If you want to lower the debt rate, less capacity. But that same exercise is what we've spent the last year and a half or so doing with council to get to this capital program. So that's how it works. But if you change the inputs, then you change the outputs.
Great explanation.
Thank you.
Fully understand it, but I still have to respond to the question. I mean, from a policy standpoint, it sounds like we're not able to plan for Terrafab because we don't have any ability to grow.
42 million in your fund balance.
But that's nowhere in the budget. That whenever you
Yes,
come
there
and
is.
say-
There's 42 million in unassigned fund balance that is in the budget. And it's on a particular page in the budget that says it's
You can't
unassigned.
decide tonight how much you're going to assign to Terrebonne or whatever the heck it is, because you don't know. There is no project.
I was going to say.
And you'll be here next year. The council that will be here next year is different than this council. They can decide, and you'll be part of it, what you want to include next year. And you might say, we want to change some of the items that are in the future capital projects years. We want to add 10 million for Project X that is specifically responding to increased demands on the city from Texas A&M University growth, or from Terrebonne growth, or some other real. You can do that. That'll be next year. But this year, you're not in a position, none of us are in a position to say, man, I just want to put 10 million in the budget and call it whatever.
And that type of discussion is probably a few years down the pike. I can tell you exactly how that's going to impact us for the next year or two. And that means construction costs are going to go up because every concrete truck in town is going to be redirected to Grimes County. And so Chandler, you and I, when we're sitting down budgeting out a house, costs are going to go up, construction costs. So I would advocate that we get this public works facility going as soon as possible and get it done before this monster that's coming in next door, monsters can be good or bad, but it's going to hit us in construction costs before anything else. Our laborers are going to want to go work over there. And so the things we need to be planning for aren't initial expenditures. It's going to be getting the work we need to get done.
Yeah. And the Highway 6 widening will be done before Terrafab comes online.
Okay. Do you have any more
No, sir.
recommendations for the
One
budget?
question.
Okay.
Go back and look at the tax rate up back where we looked at values. I heard Mr. Arden talked about values are going up and assessments, and what I'm seeing is our assessments are going down.
Correct.
Okay.
So what happened within the city of College Station, there are existing values that went up. That's that 979 million that is after all of the losses that we discussed earlier. There's an additional loss that I didn't reflect on this slide because, quite honestly, I have a tendency to put way too many numbers on a slide and confuse a lot of people. So that very first line that says certified taxable values from August of 2025 of 16.2 million, that's the base you start at. That number has changed. When we got the certified values this year, we also get what's called a supplement report. That supplement report tells us the changes that are in last year's numbers. And that $16.2 million number went down
14.
to 14s.
Yeah, so it went down considerably.
Yeah, so that was properties that were on the tax roll last year in January 1st of 2025. And when we got to August, they were certified at 16.2. When you get to this August, they're now at 14 point something.
And a lot of that is due to litigation, right?
That is a lot has to do with litigation.
Yeah.
Some of it has to do with the ARB settlements, but a lot of it's going to be litigation.
Yeah, reductions due to appeals.
Yes. So that decrease is on existing properties. We also had loss from litigation that related to minerals, that related to the litigation that was filed in 2025 that was immediately settled. We have loss because there is an estimate that the appraisal district uses to get to the certified values. They don't have to have all of their work completed. They only have to have a certain percentage completed. So they include the estimate of, okay, people are still protesting and you're going to lose some value. So we have that loss that's included. And then we have the loss from the business personal property legislation that came from the state. And that number is $160 million. So overall, within the city limits of College Station, while individuals may have experienced an increase in their property values, their existing values, overall, when you take everything in the city limits, we have a decrease in existing values.
Overall, but if you take the 979 million on a base of 16.2 million, you've got those people that did get an increase in existing values, they did see an increase in existing values, which means they'll pay more taxes because their value went up.
Correct.
So I acknowledge that, but we must consider all of those three losses in those middle lines. You just can't ignore it.
And the one that I didn't reflect because it was too many numbers on a page, the one at the top.
Okay, now, can you flip to that motion? All we're doing tonight, before we get to motion, is simply setting a date at which we will have official vote on this tax rate and the budget. So I will ask Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Wright, to make a motion.
Move to hold a public hearing on the 2027 City of College Station tax rate at
53.0254.
53.0254 on Thursday, August 27th, 2026 at 6 p.m. in City Hall Council Chambers.
Second from Mr. Shafer. This is not a roll call vote.
Actually, it is, sir.
Oh, it is.
I need to know
Okay,
if everybody is on board with holding the public hearing at 53.0254.
Cents per hundred. Start with place one, Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mr. White.
Aye.
The mayor says aye. Ms. Mcllhaney, aye. So you have a unanimous vote of 7 people to hold the public hearing on the
6 and
tax
1
rate
absent
that
is
was
what
just
the official notice in the paper will
what
say.
is that?
6 and 1 absent.
Okay, whatever. I'll take your word for it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we got it through. Obviously, there's still some this thought process that needs to occur. We'll let that happen over the next 2 weeks. We still have a lot of public hearings and work to do on the regular agenda, so let me proceed unless somebody feels like they need a break. And I don't see anybody stirring, so we move to items 8.2 and 8.3. Jeff Howell will make the presentation. I'll read them, but we're going to open both items, hear one presentation, one public hearing, and one of them is a land use, one of them is a zoning. So let me just read them. 8.2, public hearing, presentation, discussion, possible action regarding an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan future land use and character map from general commercial to urban residential for approximately 12.43 acres at 2950 Rock Prairie Road West, generally located west of the intersection of Rock Prairie Road West and Old Wellborn Road. That's item 8.2. Item 8.3, which we're also opening, is a public hearing and presentation, discussion, possible action regarding an ordinance repealing ordinance number 2025-4574 in its entirety and amending Appendix A, Unified Development Ordinance, Article 4, Zoning District, Section 4.2, Official Zoning Map of the Code of Ordinances, City College Station, Texas, by changing the zoning district boundaries from R rural to MF multifamily for approximately 12.43 acres at the same address, 2950 Rock Prairie Road West, generally located west of the intersection of Rock Prairie Road West and Old Wellborn Road. And as I've got my notes, we will have one presentation. Council may ask questions on all of what's there. I'll open the public hearings at the same time. We do have an applicant that may wish to speak. And then I'll close the public hearings, then we vote on 8.2 separate from 8.3. Well, Mr. Howell, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Jeff Howell with the Planning and Development Services Department. As was mentioned, tonight's requests are for two separate items on approximately 12.4 acres of land, generally located west of the intersection of Rock Prairie Road West and Old Wellborn Road. As you can see from the aerial, the subject property is currently vacant. Tonight's first request on the agenda is to change the comprehensive plan future land use designation from general commercial to urban residential. The urban residential land use designation is appropriate for a range of high-density multifamily development and attached residential development in various forms. So in conjunction with this, the applicant is requesting to rezone the property from R rural to MF multifamily. The applicant is proposing the rezoning for a multifamily development, which would not be allowed on a property that is zoned rural. A recent rezoning request to mixed use was brought forward for this property last year. As part of that application, since it was proposed to be mixed use, it would have required residential and commercial uses. It did not require a comprehensive plan amendment, and staff did recommend approval. This ultimately was conditionally approved by the City Council in 2025. However, that condition has not yet been satisfied, and therefore the current zoning still remains rural. The rezoning before you this evening, if approved, would nullify the previous rezoning to mixed use in its entirety by repealing the previously approved ordinance. Staff believes the proposal to amend the property to urban residential as well as to rezone it entirely to multifamily is not compatible with the character of the area, as there is no preservation of commercial on this property. The adjacent barracks development originally contained commercial areas. However, those have been modified over time to individually platted residential properties. On this side of the railroad tracks, the only commercial areas to really serve the barracks development exist on Holman Drive South and Old Wellborn Road. In an effort to support the Economic Development Master Plan in 2016 and 2017, as part of a citywide initiative with the Economic Development Department, over 100 acres were rezoned to general commercial throughout the city to preserve potential commercial areas for future development to ensure that there are opportunities to expand retail development and support a diversified economy. Staff has received no communication in support or opposition to these requests. With that, staff is recommending denial of the amendment to the future land use designation and the rezoning request. These items were heard at the July 2nd Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, where they were unanimously recommended for approval. If this item were to be approved, however, staff does recommend the same condition that was on the previous request, that the construction, installation, and acceptance of an approved sewer line be put in place. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from staff? Or council, I'm sorry, for staff from council. I see no questions from up here. Does an applicant wish to speak? Ms. Morgan, welcome.
Thank you. Good to see everyone.
You must have been
Veronica
smiling
Morgan.
back there when we had that impervious cover discussion. But
Yeah, that was an interesting discussion.
yeah, but that's not on the agenda now, so we'll leave that.
Yes, we'll leave that alone.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Veronica Morgan, Mitchell & Morgan Engineers, 3204 Earl Rudder Freeway South. I have a presentation. I'll try to run through it pretty quickly. I have a few more things that I want to add to what Jeff mentioned. As he said, this is a comp plan amendment and a rezoning case. This is the comp plan before October of '21, where it was general suburban, and then in October of '21, it moved to general commercial, as Jeff said, at the bequest of the city council to try to rezone and put on the comprehensive plan significant amounts of general commercial throughout the city. So this is your before '21, and then what was adopted in '21 on the comp plan. The proposed comp plan, as Jeff mentioned, would go to urban residential. It is our desire to do that to create multifamily for student housing at this particular location, similar to the student housing that surrounds it. Interesting note about general commercial and it being on the comp plan adjacent to single-family residential, something that we try hard not to do, but we did that in this particular case because of the definition that was made at the time that this is a hard corner. The timeline, go fast forward a little bit from October 21 when that decision was made to change that comp plan designation on the property. In 22 and 23, there was reconstruction on Rock Prairie Road that added a median and removed Old Welborn Road from the connection to Rock Prairie, both of which were good traffic mitigation measures, but it damaged the property in terms of its viability as a commercial property. So what you're seeing in the cyan or blue line is the area of Old Welborn where the pavement was removed, and the yellow is basically where the median was added. So this is a photograph looking west at Rock Prairie Road. The subject property, the 12.4 acres, is to the right where you see the barricade, and then the median that got constructed in 22 and 23. This is looking south toward Rock Prairie, standing at Old Welborn Road, and you can see this is where the pavement was removed, and there is no infrastructure there any longer with regard to a roadway base. What that did is essentially limited access to this particular site. So what you ended up with was Old Welborn now gone. The only piece that was retained was in the far north side of the site. You'd have access via residential streets to get there on the back side of the site that you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, and then right turn access only on Rock Prairie where you would be limited due to the raised median. Understanding that staff is concerned about the retention of general commercial at this particular site, I've showed you here the future land use plan as it exists today. The purple is basically a business center or a type of industrial use, if you will, light industrial use. And the location of General Parkway and where it will be constructed through that property at some point in the future as development occurs. I would argue that the better place for commercial is where you have good access, and that would be at the hard corner that would be created by General Parkway at Rock Prairie Road. That will have a full-blown intersection with 4 ways and not limited by the median. The median ends before that General Parkway intersection occurs. So the red area that we've placed on there on the alternate general commercial location would be a better location rather than the site that is under consideration tonight. I will equate, if everybody's familiar with, the Polycosina and the gas station that's at the corner of Welborn Road and Rock Prairie. Basically, think about that center. It currently has a median. The median was constructed at the same time that this median was, and it limited the access from the drive to that gas station to a right in, right out, similar to this side. If you took the Welborn Road access away from that site, it would equate to something similar here. I would argue that Polycosinas and the gas station would not survive with no access onto Welborn Road and a limited right in, right out on Rock Prairie. So the timeline that we have now seen is in 2021, the property was designated to general commercial on the comp plan. 22 and 23 was the reconstruction of Rock Prairie Road with the median and the removal of Old Welborn Road. In February 2025, and Jeff referred to this, there was a rezoning from rural to mixed use on this property. And so currently there is a mixed use pending based upon a condition that was placed at the time that the council placed on the property, that zoning would not go into effect until sewer was extended to the property. The sewer line is pending construction, waiting for some decisions that are going to be made here. But we understand that condition and are willing to accept that condition as part of this rezoning. So we have no problem with that condition being placed on this rezoning as well. The property needs to have that sewer in order to be able to function. So this is what that looked like. It went from rural in 25 to mixed use. The mixed use zoning comes with its own set of restrictions in the UDO. There is a requirement for residential to be in all buildings that would be on this 12.4 acres. And there's a requirement for commercial to be in all buildings that would be on the 12.4 acres. There is no commercial square footage size requirement in the mixed use category. So the concern is, if the idea is to preserve commercial on this property, we really can't do that. It would be lost space in the buildings because of how deep that commercial piece is and how far back those buildings would be. I would venture to say even the front building that would have visibility to Rock Prairie would have a really difficult time with a commercial venture in the bottom floor of that building because of the limited access. The other piece that mixed use brings in with it as requirements is an 85-foot maximum setback on Rock Prairie and an 85-foot maximum setback on Old Welborn. What that means is to the site is that you have limited space for parking, for surface parking. In 85 feet, you can only fit one parking bay, which is defined as a parking space, a drive aisle, and a parking space. So one module of parking is all that can fit in that 85 feet before you have to have a building. In addition, there's a 1-to-1 floor to area ratio requirement in mixed use. The only other place in College Station where the 1-to-1 floor to area ratio is mentioned and in the UDO is in Northgate. In Northgate, a 1-to-1 FAR works because you have postage stamp size pieces of property and you have to go vertical. And therefore, you have to have structured parking. What happens with a 1-to-1 FAR is it forces you into a structured parking situation. You can't make surface parking work with a 1-to-1 FAR. So, for instance, this particular piece of property is 12.4 acres. And in that 12.4 acres, you have 541,000 square feet. If you have a 4-story building, you end up having to have a building footprint of 135,000 square feet, building footprint, and 4 stories high. In this particular case, what you're looking at is a multifamily rendering development and a mixed-use rendering development. You can see what happens along Rock Prairie Road and along Old Welborn, which is on the north side of your screen, or plan north, so the top side. And that's that one May parking module that I spoke about just a moment ago. That's all you can park before you have to have buildings. What happens is because you limit your surface parking, you have to go to structured parking in order to get to that 1-to-1 FAR. It's impossible to get to a 1-to-1 FAR with surface parking. What happens with surface parking, the loss of surface parking and going to structured parking, is an incredible increase in cost of development. So a parking space typically ranges, in a surface parking lot, ranges between $5,000 and $8,000 per parking space, depending upon your contractor and price of concrete at the time, price of steel. The same parking space in a structured parking garage is 10 times that. So a single parking space in a structured parking garage is anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000 per space. So you really have to go pretty dense in order to be able to afford that structured parking. So the rezoning request before you tonight, the comp plan request is to take it from general commercial to urban residential, and the rezoning request before you tonight is to take it from rural to multifamily. We believe multifamily is the most appropriate zoning district at this particular location. It is surrounded by student housing. There is, in our opinion, no viability for commercial at this particular site due to the limited access and the depth of the property. And so the key takeaways here, we don't believe we're at a hard corner. We have that limited access. We have commercial uses adjacent to residential and forcing commercial traffic to go through residential streets. The deep site of 12.5 acres is significantly detrimental to commercial. And the rear access that we've just talked about is only available via residential streets in the barracks. The key takeaways on the zoning, we believe that that multifamily is preferable to the mixed use. There is minimal commercial use required in the mixed use, so it doesn't achieve the commercial requirement that I think the staff is looking for. The maximum setbacks limit that surface parking, and the 1-to-1 FAR forces costly structured parking, therefore driving the development cost up and increasing rents. We did have to do a TIA as part of this particular development. The mixed use also had to do a TIA as well. The results of the TIA are the same for the mixed use and for this multifamily residential zoning district request. And they were that there would be a roundabout at General Parkway at Deacon, and that we would restripe General Parkway to add an additional turn lane on that pavement. And we're amenable to both of those requirements. With that, I'll conclude my presentation. We do have online Brad Brimley with Avenue Consultants, who was our TIA consultant, if you have any questions with regard to that.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Does council have any questions for the presenter? Mr. White?
Thank you so much.
You have a question?
Yes, sir. Real quick, I just want to reiterate, I think you mentioned it twice during your presentation, and I think Jeff has also mentioned it, but I just want to make sure, if we approve your client's proposal, they are agreeable to do the sewer line. They're going to pay for that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I guess there's no questions from up here. I do have a question for Mr. Howell. And would a PDD work on this lot, or could it be used here? Could they apply for a PDD?
That could be requested, but they would then also have to provide for community benefits as well as part of it.
Right, they'd have to do lots of things to do that, but there's no reason they couldn't, if they wanted to, if it met what they consider a legitimate business plan, they could do a PDD here.
Right, yeah, and as part of that too, they would have to provide a concept plan and show more or less the layout of the building, and then depending on the comprehensive plan, also look at that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, this item is scheduled for a public hearing. I don't have anyone signed up, but I'll open the floor to the public hearing and see if there's anyone wishes to speak on this item. I do have somebody signed up for later on, but not this one. Therefore, I will close the public hearing and turn to the will of the council. Anyone wish to make a motion?
I would, Mayor.
Ms. Mcllhaney, you have the floor.
Okay, well, before I make the motion, good night, Gary. I love you.
We've got to vote separately. First on the land use item 8.2, and then separately. So you're only making a motion on 8.2, land use.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make it clear to the audience as well as all of us up here. You may understand that, but not all the rest of us do.
Oh, well, I move approval of the modification of the comprehensive plan to change the land use.
Second.
I got a second from Mr. Shafer first. So we have a motion on the floor. Do you speak to your motion?
I don't.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion to change the land use from general commercial to multifamily, as proposed by the applicant, indicate by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the only reason I'm opposing this is because, or the reason I am, is that we went through this long discussion led by others that are here tonight that suggested we needed more general commercial. So I will agree with the staff on this one, but obviously the motion passes 5-1. So we now have a land use changed, and we will move on to the zoning change that's requested to change the zoning from rural to multifamily for this property. Do you wish to make a motion again?
Mayor, on item 8.3, I move that we approve the rezoning as set forth in this proposal.
Second.
A second from Mr. Smith. Okay, you speak to that motion?
No, sir.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you very much. Now we move to item 8.4, which is, I got to turn the page, public hearing, presentation, discussion, possible action regarding an ordinance amending Appendix A UDO, Article 4 zoning district, Section 4.2, official zoning map of the Code of Ordinance, City of College Station, Texas, by changing the zoning district boundaries from R rural to MF multifamily and MH middle housing and NAP natural areas protected on approximately 35 acres generally located at the northern corner of Victoria Avenue and William D. Fitch Parkway. So this will be a one item. It's only it is a rezoning item, not a land use change. We have before us Mr. Seagraves.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Garrett Seagraves, Planning and Development Services. Tonight's request is to rezone approximately 35 acres of the 53-acre parent tract shown here to MF multifamily, MH middle housing, and NAP natural areas protected. The property is currently undeveloped. This property's comprehensive land uses are urban residential, mixed residential, and natural and open areas. Urban residential allows for a range of high-density multifamily and attached residential development that are compatible with the surrounding area. Mixed residential allows for a mix of moderate density residential development that is appropriate for residential infill and a transition area from high density to low density. And natural and open areas are protected from development for their natural function or for parks, recreation, or greenways. The request tonight is to rezone approximately 21 acres of the property from R rural to MF multifamily, about 4.5 acres from R rural to MH middle housing, and about 9.5 acres from R rural to NAP natural areas protected. After discussion and review, staff has determined that this request met the outlined rezoning criteria, such as being consistent with the comp plan, fitting use appropriate to the area, and physical suitability with the proposed district. This was heard at the July 16th P&Z Commission meeting, where the Commission unanimously voted in approval, 7-0, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well as the applicant is here.
You have any questions for staff? No, I guess I would just make a comment here. Is there any reason why they left the property off of, what is that, Southern Plantation Drive? Just leaves a little bit of rural on the other side and the north side of that?
Yes, sir. That area is also comp planned as natural and open areas, but that would be developed with future plats. Currently, they do have a preliminary in for the whole parent tract, but
I'm speaking of beyond the natural areas protected. Is that also natural areas protected?
It's comp planned as natural and open areas. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. But it looks like on the existing zoning map is rural, it's still zoned rural like the rest of it.
Correct. The whole parent tract is currently zoned rural.
Whoever, if that is not natural areas, somebody's got to extend Southern Plantations eventually.
Yes, sir. That would be done with the plat of that phase of the preliminary plat.
Is that in discussion now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Great. I'm glad to hear it. Okay. Any other questions? No, I guess there's no questions here. So, do you have an applicant that wishes to speak or only if requested? I thought I saw her back there. Miss Chrissy Hartle is going to make a presentation.
Yes. Good evening, Council. Chrissy Hartle with Mitchell & Morgan. 3204 Earl Rudder Freeway South.
Can you pull that microphone over just in front of you a little bit more?
I'll try to speak louder.
There you
Is
go.
that good? Okay.
Well, that could be helpful too.
Want to introduce a few of us that are here tonight from our team. In addition to myself, Veronica Morgan is here with Mitchell and Morgan. And we also have Austin Martin and Mason Wilson with the Martin Enderman Development. And they are the developers of the multifamily product and the future townhomes, and wanted to share a few examples of some of the products that they've also developed in Texas. As Garrett stated, our request is to rezone 35 acres of the parent tract, 54 acres, from rural to multifamily, middle housing, and natural areas protected. The remainder of the tract will remain as rural to be developed by future developers. You will see that there is a small piece of mixed residential in the area that you were speaking of, Mayor. And should that come back for platting for something that's compatible with mixed residential, that would also address Southern Plantation. That is not a part of this development. We are only developing and improving the area that is before you this evening. And the same with the general commercial. Should a future developer come in interested for the general commercial piece, that would be addressed at a later date. Both would include rezonings and future platting actions. That would include the extensions of thoroughfares with both of those. This development includes the planning for multifamily and townhomes in the middle housing piece. The townhomes not only provide a variety of housing types, but also serve as a step-down use from the multifamily to the single-family houses that are at the backside of that property line. And per the thoroughfare plan, the development will also include the extension of Castle Rock Parkway from where it is currently stubbed at Phillips Square through to Victoria Avenue. In addition to vehicular connectivity, the proposed development will also include constructing a shared use path through the property for pedestrian and bicycle connectivity. It will pick up at the current stub at the SoCo Apartments, and we will pick it up at the corner of the property, so there will be a portion of it that is undeveloped to be developed at a future time. I don't know if that would be the responsibility for a future parks improvement, but that will remain unbuilt. The hike and bike trail will continue through the property to Victoria Avenue that you see on the screen. That concludes our presentation. Just wanted to add a few other high points of the development. The developers are here if you have questions for them. Otherwise, I am also available for questions.
I do have a question. Just go back one slide to show the trails. So you have access. Isn't there in that area a reserve for native species? Navasota lady tresses had to be built somewhere back in there. Isn't that back in there somewhere that can't be developed?
I don't recall those details. I think Veronica.
Ms. Morgan may. I assume that you've already assessed that, and you can build this trail you're talking about without worrying about that. That's the main question. Is that correct?
That is correct. The Navasota lady tresses are not on this tract. It's back in the area a little bit further away.
Off the map away. So all that is just natural areas preserved back in there, and you're going to be skirting the edge of that with that dotted line trail.
If you look at your screen, the piece that's green dashed is where it is on the thoroughfare hike and bike plan. But the green dash is not what we're constructing.
Oh, you're not
We're
constructing
constructing the one that's the green dashed with the white overlay over it.
Oh, I see. Okay, I've got it.
It's on the subject tract.
All right. That's something for the future for the city to do. Okay, any other questions? No questions for presenters or the staff? Then we will turn to the public hearing. This is a public hearing on this item. I do have Mr. Aaron Gadberry. Did he wish to speak on this? I signed up late, but I allow him to come forward, and I think this is the item you were referring to.
It is, sir. Thank you.
Identify yourself and your address, and
Very good. My name is Aaron Gadberry, and I reside on Bracy Court in Shenandoah, just about at the Newport and Southern Plantation Lane intersection. You can see right there. So the extension of Southern Plantation is my concern tonight. While I recognize our community's need for housing, approving this rezoning without addressing the surrounding infrastructure impacts puts our neighborhood at risk. Tonight's agenda covers the extension of Castle Rock Parkway, but I want to turn your attention to the extension of Southern Plantation Drive in connection to Victoria. While extending and connecting Southern Plantation to Victoria is not on the agenda tonight, not on the rezoning tonight, it's shown in the preliminary plan for this tract and associated with the future phase. The circumstances on the ground have changed drastically since this connection was proposed and planned in 1998. And approving this rezoning tonight creates an even larger disparity. I'm here tonight in the interest of addressing this divergence proactively before any additional investment occurs. Southern Plantation's a quiet neighborhood street full of walkers. It borders on 3 neighborhood recreational sites, Riata Park, Southern Oaks Park, and Shenandoah HOA Pool and Park. Many of the residents using these amenities cross Southern Plantation to reach them. Furthermore, Southern Oaks Park hosts Hot Shots, a soccer program for toddlers aged 18 months to 5 years, where streets are lined wall to wall with parents loading and unloading young children. Connecting Southern Plantation through to Victoria creates an irresistible shortcut to Highway 6. Commuters from these 600 new units and high school drivers will actively bypass Barron Road's planned 5 stoplights and Highway 40's 3 major signals to race through Southern Plantation's 3 stop signs, 2 of which council added in 2017 specifically due to neighborhood safety concerns. To make matters worse, Southern Plantation will intersect Victoria directly across from the high school football and baseball stadiums, creating neighborhood intrusions of stadium parking overflow with traffic gridlock where none exists today. I'm not asking to block access to this tract or the northern part of this tract as we're looking. Southern Plantation could be extended to serve future single-family homes as a residential cul-de-sac or a non-connecting street to Victoria. My ask tonight is to direct staff to initiate a thoroughfare plan amendment to reconsider and ultimately remove the vehicular connection of Southern Plantation Drive to Victoria Avenue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your presentation. Okay, anyone else wish to speak to the council on the public hearing?
I didn't sign up, but I'll speak.
Public hearing on this item? Please come forward, identify yourself. You didn't sign up, right? To speak?
No, I didn't sign up.
Okay.
I'll be very brief.
That's fine, but when you leave, please see the people over here at the secretary's desk. Fill out the form. Thank you. Your name and address?
My name's Mary Catherine Holt. I live in Castle Rock. So we're the neighborhood that is directly next to this and has been affected by the Phillips Square thing when in 2022 they basically connected all of this. So we will be impacted by this as well. From what I saw, it's going to be 600 units. So you're talking about 600 to 1,200 vehicles. So far, the roads that have been added, the planning is poor, right? Because the first road down here that connects to William Fitch, it exits right into a turn lane. So to get to where you need to go, you have to basically cross 3 lanes of traffic right at a traffic stop. Then this new road where these new multifamily housing is going to dump out right in Victoria, which is right by the high school. And it's very busy. I mean, just exactly what the last guy said. So, yeah, we oppose it. We were just a small alcove neighborhood that basically since 2022 are just watching our properties decrease because of this. So it's just disappointing.
Thank you very much. And please appreciate your presentation. Don't forget to fill out the forms over there. Mr. Seagraves, the land use on this property is largely, the land use is urban, correct? I mean, if you go back to land use, we're not talking about, there's already that zoning. Future land use, most of it's urban residential, except and mixed residential. So we're already operating in a land use that's permitted.
Yes, sir.
And so the zoning that we're talking about is within a land use that's appropriate for this kind of zone, correct?
Yes, sir,
So it
based on the
so it
comp
is
plan.
already planned as urban residential. I just wanted to clarify that for the public to know that decisions have already been made on the land use. Any other questions for staff? I will close the public hearing now and turn to the will of the council. If you need any more questions clarified, ask them. Otherwise, the chair will entertain a motion.
Great. I'll move to approve.
A motion by Mr. White to approve the rezoning of this property as presented.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. White. Okay, so we got a motion on the floor. You wish to speak to it?
No.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? Very good. We'll just vote then. The motion is to approve this rezoning request as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I thank you all for weighing in on it. I do think that that question of extension of Southern Parkway, Plantation rather, is an open question, and that will have to be dealt with at some point. All right, we move on to regular item 8.5, Mr. Ross Brady. Presentation, discussion, possible action regarding a resolution establishing the city's legislative program for the 90th session of the Texas Legislature. Mr. Brady will introduce it, and we'll have a discussion or leading to a vote.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Ross Brady, Chief of Staff in the City Manager's Office. The item before you tonight is the city's legislative program for the 90th session. This is something we bring to Council before each legislative session, and we are doing that earlier this year for a couple of reasons. This is the document that states the City Council's agreed upon policy for all legislative issues. And authorizes staff and the Legislative Engagement Committee to interact with elected officials and engage with the public within the guidelines set forth in the policy. The reason we are bringing it forward earlier than we normally do is first, because this is the time when legislators are considering what they are going to draft and put forward in the session. As you've seen with a lot of the discussions the governor or speaker have put out about their priorities lately. And likewise, we have a legislative engagement committee now, which is something we've not had in any previous session, and they have been busy during the interim session. So we have had quarterly meetings with Representative Dyson, as well as meetings with Senator Schwartner and Representative Wharton. They have surveyed the public about issues related to the legislature, and a copy of the survey responses have been provided to you in the agenda packet that was sent out last night. Additionally, they have explored getting an AI software to help track legislation throughout the year. They've launched a new website to help citizens see what we are doing, and while IT pulls that up, I'll also talk about the fact that they have developed an information campaign for engaging with the public and significant stakeholders throughout the remaining months between now and the session. So we need the legislative program to be discussed and agreed upon by council, so that way they know that they are carrying forth the council's agreed policy as they start that information campaign. So the website, I want to kind of walk you through that. So this is on the city manager's office page on the city's website. So you can kind of see the description of the legislative engagement program. There's a link in there you can see for legislative action plan. Right now that has the action plan for the 89th session, but once council agrees upon a policy, the 90th will be updated there. And then as you scroll down, again, these are data points from the last session, but these will be kind of rolled back to zero as soon as the 90th starts, and then we'll start tracking our legislative engagement activities for the 90th session. And then throughout the previous sessions, I have sent weekly emails to the council with summaries of the things that we're watching, the things that we've been doing, the bills we're tracking. Now that will be available for the public too, with all the bills and the links there, so you can see this example. Obviously, nothing has been filed yet. November 9th is the first day for legislators to begin filing, but once there are bills that we're tracking, those bills we hear where it says example there, that will be a link to the actual bill text so that anybody can see what the bill is and kind of what its status is. And then there'll be the descriptions, and if there are special sessions, that'll specify whether it was regular or special. And then links to contact your congressman or legislator. And then finally, so that's all background on what we've been doing. What is in the document? So several of the points remain the same as what we've had in the past years. So we have financial sustainability, growth and development, local control, and protecting water resources. But there are also a couple of new items that have been added specifically for the 90th session. And so those are hotel occupancy tax for athletic facilities. So right now, cities can only use hotel occupancy tax for athletic facilities if they're within a certain population bracket. The city is growing, which is great, but that means that we are about to move outside of that population bracket. And so we have been working with Representative Dyson to propose legislation that will adjust that bracket to allow College Station to continue to use hotel occupancy tax for athletic facilities. And then the other new item in there is the funding for University Drive pedestrian crossings. So that is something that, as you all know, we've worked with our congressman to request congressional community project funding. Congressman McCall has agreed with that and put forth $5 million to the U.S. Department of Transportation. And so we won't know if that money is approved until the fall. But if it is, we want to work with TxDOT to kind of match funding there. And then, as you know, we are also participating with the MPO's Complete Streets program to prioritize which of those pedestrian crossings happen. If that congressional project funding is approved, it is usually a deadline for when those project funds have to be committed, usually about 3 years. So we want to begin those discussions with TxDOT to start trying to get funding for that project. And then, beyond those things, there were a couple of amendments added to this program after the agenda was posted. So after we posted it, the governor made an announcement that he wanted the legislature to explore deregulating municipal-owned utilities. And so we added a point in here about kind of reliability and affordability of power. Right, his argument with this is that deregulation would make municipally owned utilities or make utilities cheaper, more affordable for people. In actuality, ours are below the state average. Our residential rates are 11.8 cents per kilowatt hour. The state average is 16.4. And then our reliability is significantly greater than the state's as well. And then the other amendment that was added to this happened during our Legislative Engagement Committee meeting on Monday. In the past, this document has primarily related to empowering staff or authorizing staff to interact with elected officials and carry forth this message. Since we do have a Legislative Engagement Committee now, and they and other council members have become much more involved with the legislative process, we also wanted to add some language in there talking about council behavior in engaging with the legislature. And so on the first page of the resolution, there is an additional statement regarding that. Before I stop talking and turn it over to y'all, I also want to give you some upcoming dates regarding the legislature. So right now, there is a municipal policy summit for TML, Texas Municipal League, coming up on August 27th. It can be one representative from each city that's a member of TML. And this is the meeting at which they decide their policy stances going into the session. So Councilmember David White is going to be the city's representative at that, and he may talk more about that during council updates. Then November 3rd, we obviously have a general election. There are a couple of big statewide offices up for election at that point: governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and then as well as our local representatives up for election. November 9th, bill filing begins, and then the session begins January 12th, and we will also have an update or a forecast on the session, probably the first meeting in January 2, which is when we have traditionally taken this item to you and given a forecast. We will still do that in January. With that, I will stop talking and answer any questions that y'all may have.
Okay, I have a couple of people that are going to speak to us, but I think I would rather hear any questions from council and comments. I know Mr. White's been very much involved in this and the Legislative Engagement Committee. Before you speak,
sure.
Let's have the questions from
Sure.
down here. Mr. Shafer?
Yep. Thanks, Ross. As you know, I'm not on the committee, but I really appreciate the work that you all have done on this, and I think everything in here looks really good. I do appreciate the items that were added. You mentioned the text dot item. That's one we've talked about several times. That seems really positive, and the hot item is also positive. You know, I sound like a kind of broken record sometimes, but one of the things that is also related to Northgate that we've talked about is Hensel Park, and we've talked about the possibility of using parkland dedication fees differently in that area because that's university property, and that's not something that would change, you know, citywide or statewide, obviously. But I think I don't know, and I don't even know if this is the right place for it. But I wanted to ask it since I saw we had these items in here, if that's something that we could include as a possible ask and work with Representative Dyson and others on the potential exception for this situation in Hensel Park and Northgate because of the high density of students and the lack of open space, if we might use parkland dedication fees differently in this one situation.
So yes, it's definitely something we can add to the program here. And because again, having something in here just means that we could talk about it or could engage with them in this way. So even if it ends up that during this session, it's not the time to have that conversation with it, it's okay because we still will have had it in here. We don't have to have the conversation. We can just have it. So yes, if the rest of the council agrees, that's something that we can add in here.
There are a few items sometimes that are requests for special legislation or something that's very unique and bracketed. I don't know whether this falls into that category, but some of them don't really fall in this more general statement. I don't know whether that particular one is something that you just handle with one or two legislators and you don't put it in this agenda. I totally agree with the concern, and we need to cover it. I just, you know, it's a consideration that you have to think about. I'll leave it up to the committee whether they include it. There's always something that'll come up in January or February that you didn't have in here, which you still got to comment on.
So
Legislative Affairs Committee, this is a living document.
yeah, absolutely. And it is a living document, so we can bring it back and amend it at any time. It is better to have kind of more in there than less, because again, this is what is authorizing staff and Legislative Engagement Committee to kind of have these conversations without having to come back to council and say, hey, is it okay if we talk about this?
Did you have any comments?
No, this is the result of a lot of work, and I love the way Ross kept saying they. It was really staff that carried out a tremendous amount of work because we kept having ideas. The staff support has been phenomenal, and the really measured analysis of things that they're going to be in the legislative session that we can already tell that we're just trying to get ahead of, just being proactive. I feel like we're at least starting out on a strong footing with some vector and velocity, and like there will always be things that pop up that we don't think of or that we'll be responsive to. So it is a living document, but this gives us a platform to jump off of and do great things, hopefully.
Mr. White, you're
Well, I just
leader
wanna-
of the charge.
Yes, I just want to echo what Melissa said. I want to thank Ross, thank you so much. We've had the vision. You've actually made it happen. I'm super excited about our website and what we're going to do with the community and engaging them and stuff like that. I think this document is great. I have a couple of questions, kind of technical type of questions, but I'll wait until after the public hearing on that. But I think we've just done a great job of putting us out there early this year. If we can get our citizens engaged, I know sometimes the political process is not very fun to watch or to participate in, but we need help. We need help from our grassroots efforts, and I think we're off to a great start. So thank you so much for all your help.
Thank you. If there aren't any other comments now, I'll invite the two speakers. It's not really a public hearing on this, but there's a any item we have on the agenda that's open to the public. So I have Mr. Robert Rose, who was here earlier. but
He's virtual.
He's left?
Virtual.
Oh, he's virtual. Well,
Yes.
bring him on. I don't know. He didn't want to sit and listen to the whole meeting because he was here earlier this tonight. Have you got him?
Robert, you are unmuted.
Hello, Robert. Can you hear us?
There he goes. Your mic's on now.
I can hear you.
Okay, proceed.
Can you hear? Oh, you can hear me?
Yes, we can. Proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd like to ask that, if possible, I don't know where you are in this process, if you're at the final approval stage, but I think I'd like to request that there be more of a consideration of adding what Maura Jacobs alluded to regarding the safe passing legislation. I think whenever there's a community tragedy, whether it be bonfire collapsing or 9/11, people tend to look to leadership for an appropriate response. And I think a lot of us are looking for a response in the wake of Hannah Rapp's tragedy, and as well as other people who have met similar fates. And so at the last council meeting, there seemed to be an interest in possibly taking this matter up in a couple committees. And during the past couple of weeks, I've actually done quite a bit of work on this, and I've submitted materials to staff, even a sample resolution. And I just don't know where things stand. I've sent emails and asked people to call back, and no one has responded. And so I'm really just confused about where things are, and don't know why I haven't had those return emails and whatnot. So I know that I noticed the resolution, what doesn't seem to be placed on any agendas. So I just don't know where things stand. So I want to mention that the TxDOT item I think is encouraging, but given what we've seen in the past, even if we had the money in 2027, we're probably looking realistically at 10 years before it's actually completed. As an example of that, I give you George Bush and Welborn, and the great separation there that never seems to actually get started. So it's probably going to be a long-term deal, unfortunately. So in conclusion, I'd ask you to consider and really reflect on the tears and the agony of a bereaved mother and family, and include safe passing resolution as part of the agenda going forward. And I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. They're making notes here, Robert, so I think
I'll
we'll certainly
follow up.
consider adding to that in this living document. Excuse me?
Your mic. You got
Oh,
your-
my mic is turned off. Thank you. I hope maybe Robert's gone now, but the comments he made, the notes have been taken, and we'll certainly consider it. Ms. Shelby Boehm has also signed up to speak, so she is here, spent the whole evening with us, learned a lot as always.
I should have done what Robert did and done it online.
Hey, if you guys come early and then leave and then call in, I'm not even going to take your call.
Oh, no. Well, this time I'm excited to tell you you're not hearing about Midtown from me. So what I hope that at the end of this legislative session, and not that winning's everything, but that College Station comes out a winner instead of a victim of state policy as we experienced last session. And when you don't see me here, I'm often found watching The Real Housewives of Austin, also known as the Texas Legislator, pretty religiously, and reviewing the city's proposed legislative agenda. I just wanted to share a little bit of feedback of conversations that I've been following during the interim session that I believe could strengthen your agenda and benefit College Station as a whole. The first is to specifically include support for increased funding and continued changes for efficient use for the state's water fund. This fund provides financial assistance to political subdivisions, water supply corporations, and public water systems for critical water infrastructure projects across Texas. If you look at the Texas Water Development Board's current projects, much of this funding is currently supporting water infrastructure primarily in rural communities. However, I believe College Station could also benefit both directly through future water infrastructure projects and indirectly when surrounding rural communities receive funding to improve their own water systems and more efficiently manage one of the state's most precious resources. My second recommendation, and I hate to bring up the past, is related to data centers. Last month, the Texas House Committee on Natural Resources discussed the state's existing water supply and the potential impact of data center development. During that discussion, legislators, including myself, not that I'm a legislator, just me, myself, learned that there's still a great deal that municipalities and counties do not know about this rapidly growing industry, particularly as it comes to how much electricity and water these facilities actually require and how local governments can distinguish legitimate, responsible developers from speculative or irresponsible ones. The committee heard from representatives of companies and organizations that have been in that industry for 20 or more years, including Amazon and Google. And based on what those industry professionals shared, Priority Power, the company that nearly developed a data center less than a mile from me, fit many of the characteristics they described when discussing bad actors within the industry. Had Priority Power's proposal not involved publicly owned land, we would have had a lot less control in the scenario. And even with zoning regulations, there are limits to what zoning can regulate, especially on private property, assuming that this happens again. Local and county governments across Texas are now asking the legislator for clear framework that gives communities greater predictability regarding data centers, water, and electricity demands, and asking the legislator to establish clear expectations for what responsible data center development should look like. I certainly hope another data center proposal in College Station is unlikely, but if it is not impossible and the next proposal come on private land where the city has fewer tools available to protect its residents and it could come on private land where the city has fewer tools to regulate it. I recognize that the city's proposed legislative agenda already contains broader priorities that encompass both of these issues. However, I do believe there's power in being specific. And by explicitly advocating for increased state water infrastructure investment and a responsible statewide framework for data center development, College Station has an opportunity to be a proactive thought partner to help shape state policy before it shapes us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bain. We appreciate very much your presentation, and I'm sure the committee will consider that as they revise this document. As I said, it's a living document. I'm sure they'll bring it back to us again this fall. However, it is an item on our agenda, and I think the expectation is that we consider the resolution that's been presented to us, this is an attachment to the resolution as distributed in our packet. Is it as distributed today via the email that came to all of us on the presentation? You didn't run it. Did you run it by? No. The actual legislative program?
So the version that you have with the amendments has been seen by the Legislative Engagement Committee. It was sent to y'all with the council presentations last night, and you have a copy of it at your places.
And that's the resolution and the attachment that we are asked to consider and vote on, correct?
Yes,
okay. Now, do you have some further comments before we vote?
Yes. I needed a little bit more clarification. I know we added some language in there that council members must adhere to the statements made in our legislative program. I 500% support the legislative program. But to me, I think there's a conflicting conflict here on page 4. It says the city will support legislation which protects the autonomy of local officials to make decisions in the best interest of their communities, and how that actually works with the whereas when representing or speaking on behalf of the city or the city council, all council members will adhere to the statements made in our legislative program. To me, that is conflicting language, and would like to see if the attorney or somebody has.
I can only tell you what I believe, and I think you have two council members who were there, but I can tell you what I believe I heard as it related to it. The statement about allowing local officials to be empowered directly references the council's ability as a body to act in support of local residents and make decisions instead of the state doing it. So I actually think, if you're asking my opinion on the language on it, it complements it exactly. Because what you're saying is, as an individual council member, you can go as a person and say whatever you want. There's no restrictions on that. But if you're going to say, I mean, I'm not a council member, but if I was going as a Brian Woods, I can say, I, Brian Woods, believe A. But if I'm going to represent you as the city manager, I can't get up there and say, as the city manager of College Station, I believe A, if the legislative committee has said B. So I think this is, it's pretty easy with me because I work for you, so
Sure.
I'm going to say whatever you tell me. But this basically says if you want to say something counter to the legislative program as an individual council member, you just cannot invoke the council. And again, the other language related to council happening at a local level is related to saying the council as a body is the best group equipped to make decisions, not the state legislature for the citizens of College Station.
No, I totally understand.
The operative language there is when representing or speaking on behalf of the city council, that's the operating language there. If you're speaking on behalf of the city or the city council.
Okay, but I mean, let me just give you a hypothetical. This is, I mean, if I was not in favor of bike safety legislation, and we actually put that in this program, would I have to support that?
What would happen is if you wanted to go speak against that particular thing, if the council said, we support this resolution for bike safety, and you wanted to go speak at the legislature against it, what you couldn't do is say, as a council member representing the College Station, we're not for this or I'm not for this. What you would have to say is, as David White, and I am a council member, I support this, but you're not speaking on behalf of the council's legislative.
It would be, I'm David White from College Station. If you're going to stand before a body and represent the views of the council,
that's fine.
Then you represent the views of the council, not your individual divergent view.
And I would point out too, this was requested by council. This was not something staff added.
No. I would agree with that. I just want to make sure there wasn't conflicting that. That's perfect, because anybody can speak on behalf of themselves. Absolutely.
Anytime.
Well, is there anything in here that you don't agree with?
No.
Okay, well then.
I just wanted to make sure there was no conflict with what, the whereas and, speaking autonomously when making the decision for the community. That's all.
Okay, I certainly applaud the work of Mr. Brady and particularly the work of this council subcommittee, because we're well ahead of the curve of where we've been. It's certainly begun to focus my attention a lot more clearly on some things that are important. I would say, if we're voting tonight on the document as presented to us today, associated with that resolution, we're voting on the resolution and the attachment, I would suggest that you consider adding during the fall the three items that I heard: the safe passing legislation, bike safety, something on that, and then something related to water plan funding might be considered. I don't know. Well, you've got a water item in there already. I don't know whether you can add that particular thought to, or that aspect to it or not. And certainly water supply relative data center. Well, the governor's already pushing a big agenda on that himself. I don't know whether you want to sign on to his agenda or not, but I'll leave that up to you guys. All I'm saying is I don't think we wordsmith this into your document tonight. At least that's my thought.
It would be my thought that I'll move approval of this document with the understanding that it is a living document and that it can be amended and added to. And I would ask that staff look at the three items that were brought up for us to discuss in our next committee meeting.
I second that motion.
Okay, and I would certainly add that a new council will be in place by the first of the legislative session. they need to be educated on this clearly, and maybe a way to do it is bring it back for validation or whatever you want to call it, at least make an awareness that they are now part of council, and whoever those people are, they're now bound by this document in that sense. So a motion and a second on the floor. And we've heard from a couple of residents regarding items they'd like to see in there. Those will be considered at the next meeting. Any further discussion? Motion was made and seconded. All those in favor of adopting the resolution that adds this statement as an exhibit, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ross. We appreciate your bringing that to us. Well, we shouldn't quit before 10, surely not, right? We can? Are we allowed to end the meeting before 10? Absolutely. Okay, couple of quick items. Item 9, community interest. I'll just take the lead in this and mention 2 individuals that were not council people, but certainly community leaders that passed away this last week or two. One was Haywood Robinson, a longtime medical doctor, community leader, and then became nationally and internationally known in his work for 40 Days for Life. Passed away suddenly and had a very large crowd turn out at his celebration of life last weekend. I just want to acknowledge our condolences to his wife and family. In addition, pretty large landowner in the community, B. Uvacek, with her husband Ed Uvacek, owned a lot of land over there where Baylor Scott and White, Windwood, that whole Wood Creek, not Windwood, Wood Creek was. Ed passed away a few years ago. I think the family still owns a little bit of land along Rockbury East that used to have some cows on it. His wife, B. Uvacek, passed away this past week as well, and her celebration of life is at Embassy Suites at 4 o'clock on the 21st, Friday the 21st of August. Just wanted to mention those 2 people and extend our condolences to the families of them. Other items of community interest? Anybody got anything else? Well, I'll applaud the Parks and Rec staff. I did it on television Monday morning, but our Parks and Rec staff, they actually had to divert their attention from some of the routine things in order to host the Games of Texas 2 weeks ago. Was it last weekend? No, 2 weekends ago. And it was really, as a matter of fact, William, I think you represented the council at the opening ceremony. I think that was a really heroic effort. Our Parks and Rec staff, I credit them for a lot of work, along with the campus people and the City of Bryan Parks and Rec staff as well. But I think our staff probably carried the workload. Any other items? Council, okay, item 10, council reports on committees, boards, and commissions. I will say the BV-COG vote met yesterday, reviewed the one employee they have, which is the executive director. She's been in place since last December, doing an excellent job, and they voted on her salary adjustment for reflecting really a good start to her term and cleaning up a lot of things that BV-COG works on. So that's the only meeting I think I've made officially. No other committees? Hearing none.
Mayor, I do want to point out that on Monday, there will be a meeting at the IGC, the normal meeting. And this council had specifically requested an item on a review of the community's mental health and kind of a roundtable. That's being facilitated through that meeting. So just want to invite everybody. It's at noon, and we've got representatives from the local community that work in mental health to have a discussion about, what we have, what we don't have, and start talking about those things again.
That is that's chaired by Mr. Yancy. Is he likely to be back to chair that meeting?
We don't know for sure.
I assume he has a substitute or somebody else that works with him on that? We might want to double check.
Yeah, I mean, I'll
text
let the
him.
IGC handle
I'm
that
sure
part.
he's on top of it. He usually is, so he's done a good job with that IPC, and this is a good topic. Thank you for reminding us. Future agenda items, review of standing lists. You got the standing list. Next meeting, 2 items, the tax rate and the budget, but also state of the city. Maybe we're going to talk about it if staff has some ideas on how they're going to make some recommendation about how to do that, or if we do it. Any other future agenda items? If not, despite the fact it's not 10 o'clock, I adjourn this meeting.